Thanks, Mayor. Tonight's work session is on the continuation of the discussion with regard to a potential business retention program. The board discussed this at the January 23rd work session, but we had a couple of items on for that night and weren't able to complete the discussion, and thought we might be able to get it to finish it at the retreat, and we didn't get to it at the retreat either, so this was the next chance we had to hopefully get some direction from the board on what type of program you'd like to see. Right now, as the board knows, we've budgeted $75,000 in 2012 for this potential new program to support existing businesses, local businesses. We've listed a number, we looked at a number of cities and different programs they have, and listed a number of items that would be potentials for the new program, but we, in the end, recommended at least two things for the new program, and that was rebate of town fees for like your sign permit fee or your building plan permit or use taxes, and then reimbursement of business marketing expenses, so advertising and that type of thing, to bring in new business. And then the other thing we recommended was that businesses have a 50% match right at the beginning, so that they have some participation in the program and its benefits as well. But we are just looking to listen to the board in their discussion, see what items you'd like to have included in the new program, and then based on that direction, we'll draft a formal policy for the board to consider at a future meeting, or if there's any additional information you'd like us to research for you.
Okay. Let's see, some background. Budgeted amount is $75,000, if
Correct.
I remember that correctly.
Yep.
Okay.
$75,000 for 2012, and then based on, once we get the program implemented, based on the participation level, we'll adjust that for future years, up or down. So,
You know, can I ask a question of the chamber? In case there's anybody here. Just on the off chance. So I guess my question is, when you poll your members about what they think would be either beneficial from this program or what's holding them back in terms of growing their business or whatever, is there a common theme that you know of?
Heather Craycraft with the Superior Chamber of Commerce. Honestly, have not asked them directly about this discussion topic, knowing that it was still in discussion with you. Mm-hmm. That's a fair question. Could easily be done. We have kind of banter around different ideas about marketing, maybe marketing as a group, mm-hmm. as far as all the different retail areas, including Rock Creek Village and Superior Marketplace, the Plaza, Colton Crossing. Mm-hmm. That's one thing we've kind of talked about, but that is as far as we've gotten,
okay.
Honestly.
Yep, great, thanks. So, Chris, did you want to start with something?
There are two ideas to start. The reimbursement of marketing, business marketing expenses. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. We had talked about that as like a co-op type advertising.
right, yeah.
And that's common in a manufacturer, retail outlet world. Is that something that the other communities are doing right now?
I don't think all of them are doing that, because some of the programs in some of the older cities are geared more towards revitalization, so they're focused more on improving the exterior of the buildings. But
yeah.
There are a number of communities that do allow for some of the funds to be used for marketing expenses.
Yeah. Thinking further with that, I was wondering if there's a way that, as businesses grow, their retail sales dollars increase, we get more. So the more they make, the more we make.
Correct.
So I'm wondering if there's a way we can reimburse based on percentage of growth or something like that, so there's an incentive for them to really bring in new business as opposed to just throwing money at them and we don't know if it's going to help their business or not. Just another spin on that. But again, I don't know what the other towns are doing, so.
Yeah. Paul, do you have some additional information?
Paul Mills, town staff. As Mr. Megley identified, there are some communities who do look at reimbursement of marketing expenses. I think I would say it's probably minority versus majority. One community, in particular, Commerce City, as part of their particular program, specific to what you're talking to, Trustee Hanson, they will rebate 5% of sales tax revenues. And I don't think they've identified incremental new sales tax revenues, but I think that's a good twist to try to get some return for the dollars. But that in particular is a percent. Commerce City does do a percent of sales tax generated.
And when they do that, when they apply for the 5% reimbursement, do they submit a plan on what their marketing program is going to be with ad slicks so we can see, so that the town can see what they're actually going to be marketing and all that kind of stuff?
I may be speaking out of term because I don't know the specificity of their particular program, but the sense I get in looking at their literature and talking with some of their particular staff is they do not drill into that level of detail.
Okay.
Okay. Sandy?
To me, the value of this business retention program is towards the smaller business who's really suffered most seriously in the economic recession we've had for the past few years. It isn't the big box, it isn't even the medium box, it's the small entity. And what appeals to me in that vein, and I have talked to two business owners who would meet that requirement and sort of bandied this about with them, is some sort of competitive grant program in which, and we can define the type of business who can apply if they have been in business a couple of years, rather than just a startup, et cetera. So they've got some track record. And literally what we would do is put the parameters of the program in place, and they would apply. They would have to submit a very specific application as to what they would use the grant money for. And I suggest keeping the grant money lower and making more businesses eligible, for example, 5,000, so that 15 businesses are eligible rather than 15, so 5 are eligible, that kind of thing. And that there's actually a competitive program in which they've got to compete against all the other applications. And then there is a team somehow designated that then sorts through those and picks those out with the most merit. If we only get 15 apps and only 5 are deemed to have merit, we only spend 25 of the program at $5K each. If we get 30, obviously, we would have to pare that down to no more than 15 because we only have a $75K program. The business I happen to speak with, the latest, has been in business for 6 years, has been successful, is in the process of moving to a more appealing location, but has a lot of move-related expenses, needs a new sign, needs to alert a clientele that the move has occurred, and so I suspect her application would deal with those sorts of things. I believe a program of this sort can sort of be a jump start of a broader economic development effort, but it goes towards perhaps one of our most vulnerable populations, which is the smaller tier of businesses, not necessarily the smallest. Throw that out there. Anybody? Please feel free to respond in any way.
Yeah, I think that's great to have a grant application where it's competitive, but maybe we take it even further, because we know that a lot of small businesses fail in the first couple of years because they don't have business experience, they haven't planned appropriately. So maybe that's part of the grant process, is that they have to have a good business plan in place. They have to show that they're going to do the things necessary to run a business properly. And I would even go further and say that they should be a member of the chamber, because that's an extended support network that's going to help their business thrive.
And that was one of the things that we had noted as a possibility,
Yeah.
is that
Right.
anybody that is going to receive these funds be a member of the chamber. I don't know if everybody thinks that's something that we should include, or...
Can we make that a criteria?
Yeah,
I mean, there's
sure.
nothing wrong with that, right?
Definitely.
I think that we should.
What we're talking about is similar to the grant programs we did for individuals or nonprofits in the past when we had funds, and it was a competitive process with evaluation and we had criteria set forth as to how we were going to evaluate, and that was pretty much done by staff, came with presentation and recommendations to us, and that was good. I like the idea of that. I like the idea of the smaller tier as how we can define that. You know, I'm not sure how we define that, but we should be, because I don't think we can really impact the larger businesses, make or break business. You know, I'm sure they'd appreciate any money we gave them, but I don't think we'd do a make or break kind of give to them. I'm thinking, you know, the one business it's over in Louisville, the Via Toscana, if you ever eaten over there. If you ever saw that restaurant, some of you probably didn't live here when that first opened, as a little pool hall pizza place called Di Chizzati's, which was, our kids loved it, but the money they put into redecorating, redoing that was fantastic, and they changed the whole place around and made it. I think they're very successful. I don't know their numbers, but somebody who had that kind of vision for doing something here in some spaces, you know, our exterior spaces are kind of define what they're going to be, but interiors can be worked on. That's something somebody that's in business and has a vision of improving, that would be helpful. Something I could see that being something that could work to make somebody successful and keep them here. That's what we're talking about, retention. So.
I mean, Via Toscana is completely transformed. If
Yeah.
you go inside, you don't think you're in a strip mall. You think you're like in some fancy Italian restaurant.
Yeah, so that's just an example that came to
No,
my
that's-
mind of what somebody could do with an interior that, you know, was very plain.
You'd never
in
know
the
it's from the
storefront
outside.
otherwise.
Yeah.
I'm sure they made a substantial investment, much more than we'd ever granted.
Yeah. The Permanent used to be there.
That just kind of gives me inspiration of what can be done. So that's, I think I'm on board with your idea. Competitive, and if, you know, we have 75,000, but if we don't see enough of merit, we don't give it all away. That's-
Do you want to include a limitation on the size of business that can participate in the program?
Up or down? What's your thoughts?
I mean, if there's a cap on the percentage or the amount that you can apply for, it shouldn't matter what size business you are. I would think.
Yeah, I don't want to.
So you want Costco to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
What brings to mind for me, as you guys are all talking, and I was thinking about it the last time we discussed this, but I didn't throw this out. Dr. Cog has a TIP process, a transportation improvement program, where they have a rating system that they've created in order to rate the jobs that come in and award them whatever the amount that, you know, they're able to award them based on their point system. And so I think that that would be something that we could create ourselves as well. And I'm sure there's other communities that have done that. And it wouldn't have to be limited as to what type of improvement. I mean, it could be a facade improvement, it could be a sign, it could be beautification of their patio or extension of their patio or a new patio that they didn't have
build a
before. It could be some special marketing that they want to do, or it could, I mean, in other words, it would fit. You create your point system and you tally it up based on the jobs that come in and how that would
Yeah, I mean,
work across the board of whatever came forward.
we had that evaluation criteria set up for quarterly contingency
We did.
grants.
You're right.
That'd be something similar to that we could have set up. I mean, Does the board want to include the ability for a local business owner for interior remodel or improvements?
I think one of the things that we could tie it to is energy efficiency. That whole Boulder County program, and I think, don't we have the program too, where we come and put lights in? I mean, we can do like a general audit with the business on everything that they do to grow their business, but also how they manage their bills and all that. And if we can show them that they can save X number of dollars a year just by putting in LED lights and making sure that the windows are properly caulked and all that kind of stuff, I think we're really supporting them full circle. And are there resources through Boulder County that we can tap into, and also the state, that will help us with these efforts? I mean, we can put together our own package for businesses that encompass everything.
I don't see actually any reason to limit an application, because I can't foresee what is making a business successful or hindering success. So to me, all we would specify is per business the maximum grant size. Let's say it's $5K. And they put the proposal together, and they have to justify how it would positively impact their business. And if we're convinced, the selection committee is convinced, then the selection committee will approve it. And if the selection committee doesn't feel like this really would make any difference at all, of course, they will deny it. So I actually would suggest more of an open-ended program with very few limitations, and max we can spend $75K, and least we can spend is $0, and let's just experiment with it. I would limit it to size of business somehow, because I do think it needs to stay in small business to have any impact. $5K, if you agree with that amount, isn't going to really impact Costco or Target or anything. I don't think that's a good expenditure of money. I don't think it gets us any further down the pike in that tier of business. What a thing I'd throw out there is should this go, if generally accepted, would it go out to a business that has been in business, let's say, a year or longer, 2 years or longer, 3 years or longer? And I can argue that one both ways. I've told you personally here, I really like what Rock Creek Sports Grill is doing thus far, and they're really seriously trying to make things work there. They've got a nice weekend crowd. I think it's the strongest business that's been in that spot since I've been in town, and yet they don't have an official sign outside, and they're brand new. So they would be excluded from a program that requires you to have been in business, let's say, 2 years or more. So, I can convince myself that we shouldn't put that limitation on it either, and just let it develop the way it develops. And if the selection committee thinks they're too new and isn't worth the $5,000 worth of investment, the selection committee will decide they're too new, and whatever.
So I have a question for Paul. So on any of these other towns or cities programs, I think you said they didn't really drill down to this, but could they analyze whether or not they received benefit from their programs at all?
Mayor, in particular, I was looking at Boulder's program. They've got a couple of components to theirs. Their big program is their $350,000 annual, what they call flexible rebate program. The city of Boulder, in conjunction with, I'm not sure if it's necessarily their chamber, but some outside entity does do some type of performance metrics to see if the investment is in fact worthwhile. I did take a cursory review of that. So generally, to answer your question, at least Boulder makes an effort at it. And obviously we could drill down and look at some other entities, but I think between Boulder and we could come up with some performance metrics to ensure that we're spending these tax dollars in a wise, judicious manner.
Okay, thanks. And then, excuse me, questions for the board. So do you want to save some money for marketing for various areas of town, or do you want to use all $75K for this other program?
For marketing the program to the town, or?
No, say that the marketplace, small retailers wanted to do a mass mailing, and they wanted to do it together as a flyer, or if the areas down by Safeway wanted to do that as a flyer. Do you want to save any of that money for marketing, or not necessarily?
Good question.
Okay.
I would prefer not to, and throw maybe some money at the chamber in order to execute a group marketing effort. And I wouldn't imagine it would be a whole lot of money.
Well, the chamber does a monthly door hanger, which Mark quarterly.
Rooftop drop.
Yeah, rooftop
Yeah.
drop. So,
But she's
that
talking about
program
a
could be expanded.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
And actually, could I have the chamber director come forward to ask a question?
Yes.
So, were you thinking of expanding a current program that you had, or were you thinking of adding a completely new program for this?
Just a brief oversight, I guess, basically, or overview of our rooftop program. Our program started 2 years ago called the Rooftop Drop. Catchy name, never really changed. It's not physically left on the roof, obviously. It's delivered and coordinated through the chamber. We split the whole entire town into 4 quadrants, so we hit each quadrant once in coordination with a local nonprofit, which we then make a donation to for doing the assembly and then delivery of all the bags. So we do basically about 3,900 throughout the whole year. All of those are chamber members only, are invited to insert a flyer, a coupon, a pamphlet, a pad of paper, whatever they want in there. And then we also do our new resident bags that are dropped. Those are welcome to anyone to participate in. You don't have to be a chamber member. So any additional marketing pieces I would think would be above and beyond what we do currently.
So when you were talking about a group marketing piece, was it in conjunction with what you've already done, or something completely different?
Something new, because honestly, we have a chamber member that wants to make it happen. And happens to be a printer. If that's, a direction we go in, we could go through a process, and Beth and I from the staff have also talked about other avenues in which we could go through a bid process, get a few bids for what this would look like and how it would be coordinated, and then kind of offered to the local retail shops, and whether they took advantage of it or not would be their choice.
And so how would this marketing reach residents?
It was a direct mail piece. This
I see.
initial
Okay.
offering was contribute. The more people we get involved in this piece, the less the cost is to the business owner, and therefore, more bang for your buck. And that's what he was working on. So,
What's the success rate of the rooftop drops on average? The number of homes that actually go and visit the businesses that the pieces were left?
we are in the process of actually doing a direct survey to get those numbers, but from the feedback we have had probably from 2 or 3 of our chamber members, they pretty much can tell you the day it drops because they get phone calls.
Okay.
A few people have had great response, and then others, honestly, I'm not sure if they're asking where they heard about the business, so they're not getting that direct correlation to the rooftop, but overall, we've heard very good feedback.
Okay. So on the small businesses, Matt, in town, if we included them, in town, so the rooftop drops include Superior Chamber businesses, which could also be Louisville businesses and all that.
Absolutely.
So this would be just
Because
for...
over 60% are not in the town boundaries.
Right. So this would be for Superior business. How many businesses do you think would participate in something like that? The small business. How many small businesses do we have in town?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. Do you have any idea?
I don't. I could do it real quick. But.
Are you the typical storefront type of?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got to be less than 50.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, 50.
Yeah.
And if I may, I think from a business license perspective, annual filers, we have maybe upwards of 300. So that would be representative of all the individuals who have business license. So that would include the large, include the small storefront, and include the home businesses
Yeah, and does that include like door-to-door solicitors that have,
We typically do not require a business license for those individuals.
okay.
But it could include a home business who would collect sales tax.
Yeah.
or-
And along those lines, I assume that we're just talking at sales tax generators and not professional offices that the town would not collect money off of in general.
That, yes.
Okay. So what would, I'm sorry, Sandy, what would be an example of a storefront business that doesn't collect sales tax here in town?
An insurance company, although we don't have it anymore, but
Yeah.
professional offices like that.
Yeah.
A dentist collects sales tax, don't they?
I don't think so, no.
I've never
Unless they're
paid it.
selling stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I would rethink that. I mean, if they're involved, we want to keep the residents in town to spend their money here. So I don't know. It's something that we should consider. But I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying, Andrew, that it's, this is to generate sales tax revenue.
Yeah, I understand the point as well, but I say we have to be careful before putting limitations on it. Going back to your original question is, should we take some of the 75K and put it elsewhere? I don't think 75K is overly generous for any new effort. To me, I would not. My discomfort with this whole approach is the fact that we're not putting together a cohesive program before we start any one element. Typically, we would determine objectives, we would determine what we want to do broadly, and then put the pieces together. Here, we're actually starting with a piece. And the only reason I'm sort of going for even, acknowledging this approach is because I think actually a competitive grant program could stand the test of time as one of the legs of the stool, et cetera, going forward. I wouldn't cut the 75K back. I am a big complimenter of the rooftop drop program because of my own behavior. I get that. I want it every quarter. I don't want it just one quarter. And when I get it, I go through it and I use it. So I think it's well done. I think it's cheap. It's affordable for the businesses to participate in, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm very complimentary about that. If you don't have enough money to properly execute that, I would suggest you come forward to the board separately and ask for more money on that, but I don't see that coming out of this 75K if we're going to be serious about this competitive grant program.
And would some of that money be able to be spent on the commercials that we could run on Channel 8?
No. I think that's a different, again, the preferred approach is to have a program in place, a certain objective we're trying to meet with multiple prongs to the objective. And I like what you're saying, Andrew. I would love to see Channel 8 be used to promote our local businesses, particularly this small tier. So let's consider that as another prong, but not necessarily out of the 75K.
Sorry. And how would home-based businesses factor into the 75,000?
Well, we've discussed that there's several home-based businesses that aren't recognized for various reasons, so it would be nice to have them as part of the chamber and develop a program just for them, but I think what we need to be concerned about is the businesses that occupy the marketplace and some of the other centers in town first, and not try and conquer everything in the first year, but let's roll it out and see what we can get done and improve on it the next year.
Actually, my question is, would a home-based business be able to apply for one of these grants?
Well, I think
I mean, is that going to be criteria that we exclude or include?
I think we have to drill down to that. Like Sandy said, let's not exclude anything at this point, but then eventually, again, I'd say we keep it simple and we go to the businesses that have the storefronts first. And then let's create a program just for home-based businesses later.
I guess I'd have to know why we would help home-based businesses at all, compared to why you wouldn't help every worker in town.
Yeah, I agree with
Why?
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is there are some serious home-based businesses in this community that, with the right incentive, move up to the 2-employee business and the 3-employee business and the 4-employee business. So at this point, I don't presume to know who those are, and if the program, let's say it has a max of $5K per business, right? That doesn't mean they'll get it. Maybe they only need $1,000 for something, or $2,500 that they can justify that they need. If in fact a home-based business can't justify to the satisfaction of the selection committee, they're not selected for the program. But I think it meets our objectives as a town to try to start embracing home-based businesses, help them grow so they become that smallest, the smallest public tier, if you will, with a small storefront, and then bigger and bigger and bigger. So what do we call that, Chris? Economic gardening, to where we're actually growing those those home-based business into the next tier of businesses.
Well, we've talked about the accelerators, the small business accelerators. And it's just really one-person operations that all set up a shop in one building, and the goal is to have them out on their own in a bigger space within the town within 2 years. So that's a whole nother animal to talk about. How much does it cost to put a commercial on our Channel 8?
Free for us to put it on there, someone just has to make the commercial.
Because it's, Heather,
I envisioned Heather being like, meet the chamber interviews of whatever, but
doesn't, Brad,
That's not a bad
Brad
idea.
Hughes does
great
his,
idea.
with his, his interviews, what is that? He's got that piece of equipment. He goes around to businesses and he does these video interviews of them, and it's their opportunity to sell their business. And I'm not sure
It's
how.
kind of like a podcast.
Yeah,
I think is
but
how
it's
I would
video.
describe it. Yeah.
Stuff like that. I mean, if we can get, we have people in town that would probably be willing to help do that kind of stuff.
Potentially,
but
yeah.
is he doing that more now, or?
Not that I know of, but we can ask him.
Okay.
might be an interesting place to do the home-based businesses. This is my home-based business, you get your 30 seconds on Tuesday nights or whatever.
Here's a potential way to collaborate. We've got DECA and FBLA at Monarch, who we could possibly sort of achieve other objectives by engaging our youth in that element. I don't know if they have any instruction in advertising or marketing or whatnot where they could be brought into this. We're not looking for Oscars here, right? We're looking for, good, passable stuff. Another thing would be the programs over at
That would be Andy, by the way.
Yeah. Grammy.
Unless you break into a song. It's not Grammy.
Maybe CU, maybe Front Range, whatever, to where I think it's a great idea to better utilize Channel 8. I think there are a lot of ways to do that very affordably.
Well, we've got Brandon, our in-house guy, that's very talented, so he could be a part of that, too. So we've got all kinds of talent around to do that.
We've got Derek doing the Superior Historical film because he's into it as part of his Eagle project. He's in high school. So I think if we just put the feelers out, we could probably get some takers.
So I've heard Sandy's mentioned a couple times a $5,000 limit.
Yeah.
We had in our cover memo, up to 7,500 or even could go up to 15,000. Does the board want to set a limit? And in addition to that, set a limit, and then do you want to require a 50% match
Oh, have them,
to get the funding?
so they would, if it cost $7,500, they would kick in 75, so it would be a $15,000 project.
Right, if they're requesting, 75. Do you want to go that far with it, and do you want to cap it at a certain amount?
I like that idea, because then everybody has skin in the game.
It might be difficult for some businesses on the other side, too, but
It'd be nice if we had numbers from other communities with the types of businesses that we have, how much have they really required throughout the year. If we have 50 businesses, that's $1,500 apiece. I'm sure
Paul,
that
did
it's
you
not
have
enough
that in
for
your
a lot of
research you
businesses,
did?
but, maybe some businesses only need $1,500.
Right.
I'd hate to say, $5,000 or $7,500 max, and then, they run it up to that, and they don't really need that much.
Well, that would be part of their application, you know, what's the intended purpose for the funds? And if it looks like they don't have, say they're asking for $7,500, but what they have in their application they're going to use it for doesn't, then we would need to talk to them and really kind of try to.
I think you
drill down.
don't have an actual cap on what each, what you award each business. You have the pool of businesses that, jobs that come in, you know, projects at a certain, you know, deadline. And then with the 75,000, you award that based on points, the amount that you give each business or each project. And if you want to do a 50% match, I mean, that certainly
Well,
gives them ownership
The
in it.
idea would be to try to limit, and somebody from like Target or Whole Foods coming in and saying,
But you don't
like
have to award
75,000,
that.
and we're going to, right, you don't have
You
to.
wouldn't have to award it. I mean, you'd create a point system that gets the end result that you're looking for.
And can I just segue along the point thing? I think we need to be very cautious about how we're awarding these things, because it needs to be very transparent. It needs to be very logical why we're making something, because this could easily move into like, well, I know Bob pretty well, and so Bob has a pretty nice restaurant. I might give him some money. You know, that we need to be very cautious of going.
And I
that
thought we
way.
did a very good job with the contingency grants. You had all these categories, and it was very clear, you know, how the points would be added up and where you were able to, you know, excel in different areas for your project.
And I think the mayor beat me to it. I was just going to say I'm uncomfortable with the points because of that. The word is going to get out, well, how come Bob got more than I did? You know, I like the skin in the game. I think that's good. I also like the 5,000 max that allows us a potential, you know, I guess 15.
I mean, we could
Company.
start with that in the program, and then
But some of it could be
we adjust the
2,500.
policy or the program
So-
as, you know, if it looks like we need to increase it, or
And I like the matching though too. But I think 5,000 is a good cap.
Sandy.
I think that starting out, the whole goal is to me, to at least entice a certain number of businesses to put grant apps in. And so my gut says keep it smaller in terms of the dollar amount and try to
Spread it.
incorporate more people into the program. I believe the suggestion is very good about metrics, and I'd like to see that in there. And a certain the metrics have to be, you know, the success of the program type of metrics have to be in place for you to be able to participate in next year's program. So it becomes sort of this building program. Rematching, I would like to think about that a little bit more. I don't necessarily want to restrict the program at the outset to matches only, but for various reasons, because there may be businesses out there that, on the merits, deserve a grant but simply can't afford the match. So I'm a little uncomfortable with excluding them at the outset. I do, however, think that a match could well be a requirement of the program that the selection committee requires of a particular applicant if they feel we're willing to take this risk up to a certain level if you match it. So I'm almost interpreting now that that would be variable and would be up to the selection committee based on the particular grant application rather than as a uniform thing. But I have to think about that a
Wouldn't
little
that
bit
create
more.
a two-tiered system though? Like so,
I don't know.
How come I have to match when Joe didn't have to
Well,
match?
I'm very familiar with two grant programs I have in the back of my mind, and one is very successful and has this variable match in it, and it works successfully, and it didn't create a two-tiered program. But I think that we don't have to have perfection tonight. You know, we just have to have sort of a program that in our guts feels feels right. But that point system, Deb, I see where you're going with it, and I've been involved with that in the past. It is very prone to manipulation, in my opinion, but there has to be a core set of agreed-upon requirements of the program, baseline requirements that we want this program to have. And any successful applicant would have had to meet those requirements. So,
Which requirements, are like we were talking about at the beginning?
whatever we set in place. And we don't have to do that in this committee. If we can just maybe give some guidelines of what we're interested in pursuing, and then some of us can sit down. I'm happy to think that through a little bit better as to what those guidelines would be.
It'd be nice if we had the requirements and they don't meet the minimum requirements, that we have resources to help
Right.
them meet those requirements.
Well, one requirement, chamber membership, I think that's very reasonable.
Okay.
Again, another requirement would be years in business. Maybe baseline revenues might be one. We'd have to seriously consider if we want to exclude anybody on those levels. But another requirement might be what we're willing to have this fund used for. Signage, internal renovation, external renovation, new roof. What are we willing to have it include? Or we could be nonspecific and have them have to justify how that particular improvement would benefit them and make them more successful, that kind of thing. So,
What, moving forward, how do we roll it out to everybody, and who's the selection committee and all of that?
Yeah, I was going to ask for
So-
clarification on that. You mentioned a couple times the selection committee, but I'm not sure what you're going for there.
well, I'm not sure either. We're just brainstorming here, but I do believe there is going to have to be a group of people, and that could be whoever we choose. It could be, for example, the ERDC that does the first vetting, maybe puts the finalists forth, and then the finalists are selected by the board. I don't know. It could be the chamber board. It could be hand-selected from the community, but there's going to have to be a selection mechanism if we're going to do a competitive grant program. It's just part and parcel, but I don't think we have to determine precisely who that best group of people would be tonight.
When I was thinking about this program, I was thinking about the quarterly contingency grants that we do, and staff goes through those and evaluates, and then gives to the board with some recommendation, and then the board selects. And I was thinking of a similar type process with this, but
Right.
if the board is thinking about something else, then
I think that's certainly on the table there.
So I apologize for having to be late for the meeting, but I think my questions were asked, but I just wondered if somebody could tell me quickly the answers. I asked whether this inventory, this is an inventory, but have there, of these other communities that have put these in place, has there been any evidence that it influenced any business's behavior? And what are the level of costs and budgets that they put in elsewhere? Is there a short, bring me up to speed answer?
I'll turn it back over to Bob.
Because I hate to just inventory and throw money at something and have evidence that it hasn't had any effect elsewhere.
And I think your concern, Trustee Skumatz, is consistent with your colleagues up there. One anecdotal bit of information I provided earlier is Boulder with their particular program. Excuse me, they do have an outside agency. I'm not sure who exactly it is, I don't recall, but they're a chamber or something who does apply metrics to the particular program and see if, in fact, it is good, judicious use of tax dollars, if, in fact, the investment has a return. So the answer is, a long-winded answer, yes, people do, in fact, do that, and I don't see any reason why we could not,
I'm asking now, have their past programs had an effect? I don't want to know about going into the future. I want to know, have their efforts already had an effect?
The answer is
Okay,
yes, from
thanks.
their particular reports, a positive effect.
So just along those lines, however we
Thank you.
craft this program, I want to make sure that there's an annual report that the return on our investment has been positive as opposed to just spending money and realizing that it hasn't been effective, at least for the town's bottom line or for businesses in general. So there would be a requirement that the business would send us a report at the end of 12 months after this program's been instituted, and this is how it's been beneficial, and the town could potentially, I think we run into a problem, and the finance director could correct me, that we can't audit individual businesses, and so I'm not sure how we would know that. It probably would be a self-reporting, I suppose.
Yep.
And the first part of my question was, how do we roll something like that out? I think that's one of the most important parts of any program is if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So it'd be nice if we could have it in front of them on a regular basis. And I'm not sure if this is the job of the economic development person, or if this is something that trustees do on a regular basis, go by
Chamber.
and stop businesses, stop in and see
Yeah, if
businesses
they're going to
and let them
be,
know.
if one of the requirements is that members of the chamber would be a good avenue for that as well.
So getting back to, well, Deborah?
One more thing. In this packet for the work session, I was hoping to see a chart based on the neighboring communities and what they've done for business retention programs specifically and how successful they are. Is there any way we could get that kind of information? Just kind of a quick look?
Yeah.
Not the laundry list, but a matrix.
Exactly.
That's what I
I
was
think the first part of your inquiry, yes, we could and actually do have, I've got a 3-page summary which I'm looking at, which topically highlights. The second question, which speaks to what the mayor and trustee Skumans have already mentioned as it relates to how efficient these programs are, that's a little bit more difficult. But we can work at getting whatever information we can get our hands on to you.
Yeah, any way you could just make it in a chart form that would be just a quick read that kind of helps you assess at least the ideas and the things that are in the neighboring communities without having to read a 30-page report, which, I mean, I know that's asking a lot to create a table, but...
Some of the programs are, I mean, this 3-page summary is probably what you're looking for. It's 3 pages, I know, unless we narrow down the number of communities that we're going to give you, but I think it's better if you see all the communities we've looked at in their programs, so.
And I have an adversity to reading large packets, which clearly today was a large packet. I'm just thinking in terms of, residents and others who just want to look at something that's, a very quick read.
Just understand,
Sorry.
from a matrix standpoint, each one of these programs is unique to the community.
Right, yeah,
So
Right.
the 10 items that Louisville does, Boulder may do 2 of those, and Commerce City may do 1 of those, plus 17 different items. But we'll work
And-
at getting something to you.
Okay.
And if
Thank you, I appreciate it.
know, the cities along one side and the program types along the top, and
We
just
can-
fill in the sort of cost-benefit ratios for them or something like that. That would work.
We'll give it a shot.
I appreciate it, thanks.
Matt, do you have the overviews of each program? I know they could be several pages each one.
Yeah.
Is it possible, could I get a copy? I'd love to read through each one of them. And
Yeah, we can send that to you.
Ditto on that.
We'll send it to the board, and if you want to read it, you can read it, and if you want to discard it, you can discard it.
Sandy?
I love matrices dearly, but Paul, I do believe these programs are totally unique, and if you're losing the richness of each program trying to fit it into a matrix, I frankly don't see the value of that.
Well, if we
So,
send you the matrix and
okay,
the full, you'll
Yeah.
have both, and you can choose which one.
I'm just sensitive to limited staff time to do
Yeah.
these things.
Hey, Matt,
so-
can you digitize it, and so we can get it on our iPads, and that way we don't have to
Yeah.
print all that out?
Yeah.
Could I get it on a CD so I could listen to it?
And get the Grammy?
For that grant.
Any other format requests while we're taking orders?
So let's wrap up here with some next steps, and if the board feels otherwise, let me know, but I think the town staff should start creating maybe something that would be similar to the quarterly contingency grant program, trying to get, and work with whoever wants to work, the chamber or EDRC, and trying to figure out what the criteria should be, and then get that back to the board for our perusal And can you give me a time frame about how long that, realistically, how long it would take?
Well, if we want to get input from the business community, I would say probably at least a month.
Okay.
So my main concern is that we go down the path of a grants program, and it turns out that in every case, the grants program has been the worst performer in all the other communities, and in fact, the something else is always the stronger performer. So that I wouldn't want to spend loads of staff time if in fact that's not the most effective kind of program. So that's my caveat.
We'll let the town manager balance out the risk-benefit of going down one pathway first.
That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have each one of the programs, so we can look at the best of all.
Okay, and anything else we should have town staff work on in the meantime? Okay, everybody comfortable with that?
I actually, I'm actually not comfortable with this last statement. We are a unique community, and let's be sure to analyze ourselves as a unique community with our unique needs. I do think it's wise to always look what area communities are doing, particularly with the same demographic. I think Paul has a lot of that information already. He's presented a lot of it already to us. I just want us to keep that in mind.
So, just to be clear, town staff will work on this for a month, so we're the first meeting in February, so second meeting in March, you think?
Yeah. My hesitation with the second meeting in March is we're only have
first
four-
meeting in
four
April,
people
right.
there, so, yeah.
I mean, if you can do it sooner, great, but, yeah, no. Your issue is well taken, thank you. Okay. So why don't we take a few-minute break unless there's anything else to come before the work session, and we'll be back at 7. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order a Town of Superior Board of Trustees and the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 and the Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District Board of Directors meeting for February 13th, 2012. And Phyllis, if you'd call the roll.
Mayor Andrew Muckle.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ely Gagor.
Here.
Trustees Joe Cirelli.
Here.
Chris Hansen.
Here.
Sandy Pennington.
Here.
Lisa Schumacher.
Here.
Deborah Williams.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
Town Clerk Paul Sawyer here.
Great, thanks. That brings us to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes.
Trustee Williams?
I'd like to pull I'm sorry, 7D, 7E, 7G, and 7I.
Aye.
Trustee Pennington?
And I want to pull 7F. F. Frank.
Any other changes? Trustee Skumatz? Okay. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda with those changes by Trustee Skumatz. Is there a second? Trustee Williams, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. So that brings us to item number 4, reports, questions, and issues. Anybody like to start this evening?
I can start. Yeah.
Okay. Trustee Griffiths?
Trustee Pennington and I found ourselves on a snowy morning on Saturday at the Sears grand opening. And Heather was there as well. There was a lot of participation from the chamber. What a great place that is. I don't know if you guys have been there, walked around. It just looks great. And they were, I guess the feedback for the town is they feel very welcomed by you, Matt, and by the rest of the town staff. I think it's going to be a successful endeavor. They did ask for one thing in terms of advertising.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there's people that Domino's Pizza did in other stores. They have those signs, those moving signs. There's a young man usually on his iPod listening to music and just moving around, and so those are very catchy. And they requested if they could do that maybe once a month or right by McCaslin and Marshall in the corner, high traffic area, and try to get people in. I know those work. So
Currently, it's not allowed by our code.
right, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yep.
I'm bringing it up to see how the rest of you feel. You know, maybe from 10 to 2, 10 to 3 o'clock, 4 or 5 hours, have one of those young men up there and or young women just advertising and bringing some business into. And I guess one asks the board what your thoughts are.
I think my thought is that if we want to proceed with that, and I guess I haven't thought about it hard enough one way or the other, is it'd be best to have the Planning Commission make sure that they look at it and make sure it makes sense for our code and it's not just for one business. So, I'm not sure what their timeline looks like, but
I'll weigh in a little bit on it. The net effect of that, guy standing out there, a girl waving the sign, is they bring traffic into the entire Superior Marketplace. And I think it's a sort of a newer way of getting attention, and should definitely be considered. At least
I
the
think so, too.
discussion should be had to see whether or not we want to go there.
And I think that it would be very, very important that if we did consider that we advertise that throughout the community so that every business has that opportunity and doesn't just see it happening and
So,
then
I mean,
start asking
That's a
questions.
good point. I mean, you open up Pandora's box a little bit, because you could have
Well, you don't want to have 4 or
20
5 people.
businesses out
Yeah.
there with guys standing on the
this is why
sidewalk.
this is why I'd prefer to have the Planning Commission
Right.
think about this for a while.
But we can make it a policy, only one person can be there
And they have
at
to
a
sign up
time,
ahead of
and
time.
it has to be scheduled, et cetera, et cetera. So we can manage it if we see that it has merits.
No, because you have 4 people in the corner, it would be very distracting, cause an accident. People waving their sign. But if you had one that draws
I don't know if
attention.
we could just limit it to one business.
No, not one business.
Yeah,
one
At a time.
We'd have to set up some sort of a system where they were able to sign up. We'd
They would have to
create
sign
a
up here.
whole system.
Yeah.
So
So we could banter this about this evening, or we could have the planning commission start to work on it, if that sounds okay. And I'm
Yeah.
not sure what their timeline
I
looks
agree
like.
with
but-
that.
And possibly look at neighboring communities that have this same program.
Well, Louisville does it.
Yeah, we know
And they're-
Louisville
and
does.
they're very,
So how do they work that out?
But it's open
Well,
to
this was-
anybody. I don't
It's open
think-
to anyone.
They don't have any
At any time,
Yep.
period.
period.
Okay.
Well, maybe we can look at other neighboring communities as well.
I would say I think there's probably other effective ways to advertise than having somebody stand on the street.
actually, it's
with a
very
sign.
effective. It's the new way of
I'm talking
advertising.
about,
It is effective, believe it or not.
But, okay,
We'll look
have
into
the
it.
planning commission
Yes.
take a look at it.
Trustee Gerveris, anything else this
No,
evening?
it was just a good way to start the weekend.
Yes, yes, very good. Well, I'm glad, hopefully it's going to be successful, so thank you for attending. Trustee Pennington?
Along with that, I went to an HOA meeting this week. OSAC meeting, I just happened to have a free evening and sat in on that. An observation from that OSAC meeting, OSAC members have been given the new draft of the advisory committee recommendations, as well as some sort of recommended short Robert's Rules of Orders form, and I found myself at a distinct disadvantage because the board had not been given that yet. And so they turned to Deb and me at that meeting and sort of questioned us about certain things that we were, didn't have the current copy, hadn't received the current copy, and hadn't received the Robert's Rules short form. So I'd like to make sure we're always informed
Yeah,
before the committees.
I thought I included the simplified rules in a weekly digest as an attachment, but the ordinance, I'm not sure I sent that, so I apologize for that. And I'll make sure I send that out tomorrow.
Yeah, that'd be, I figured it was an oversight. Of course, we all attended the board retreat on January 31st. I thought it was a very productive session. I hope my peers feel the same way. Are we for sure having the March 26th board meeting with 3 members absent? I mean, is there a reason to have that meeting with just 4 of us here, or should we cancel the meeting, I guess, is the question.
In the digest, I put that I was planning on having it unless I heard otherwise.
Can we get anything done? And if we can get something done, I'm all for having it.
I think we can make some big changes.
So those 4 of us, I guess, we can try to cancel it.
I'm out of town, so.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'd recommend is if there's significant business to be done that don't involve huge policy issues, then I'm not here for that, but I'd recommend holding the meeting. If it's, something that could be pushed out to the next meeting, then maybe not.
We'll look again at our work,
What is the date of that again?
March 26th.
Maybe you can load up the March 12th meeting and then take care of business there.
And the staff's discussion was, keep in mind that there's the chance we may not have it, so if you need something done in March, make sure it's on the March 12th
On the first one.
meeting, so.
Which is the meeting I'm going to miss.
3 of us were at the Dr. Cog Transportation Short Course this week. Deb and me and Beth was there. Not exciting material, but boy, is it ever necessary. And they do a series of 3 different short courses each, I don't know if it's each year or each semi-annually or whatever, but if anybody ever wants to figure out how transportation works, I really recommend those programs.
When do you get the day-long one on water law?
Haven't done that one yet. I have to add that to the repertoire. I did want to put out here the BLM kick process. That's going to come before us, and I think, Matt, you suggested that would come before the board on February 27th.
That's what we're...
Right, with a PD, right?
No, this is just an agreement between the town and the property owners.
Okay. I would like to suggest a different process on that. I actually think that since this is sort of setting a tone for town center, and it's an important, really important initiation of that whole thing, that we actually remove it to a work session for the general discussion and then bring it to the board at the next meeting for a decision, because I think it's important enough to do part or all of a work session.
To discuss the agreement?
Well, just the concept, why we're going down this path, what the benefits, merits, demerits of it are, and what the intended consequences are, the law of unintended consequences, that kind of thing. Make sure we give it just a thorough vetting.
If I could pipe in, I agree. I felt like this was a big thing that we should have a chance to look at before we have it at a meeting. The second piece of this, and I'm not sure where it should fit in, but if we go down this road, I really want the planning commission to be involved somehow, too. And I'm not, maybe not at the agreement stage, but
I think that, I suspect that we have plenty of time to think about this unless there's somebody that I'm unaware of who wants to build a business there. So we probably have a little bit of time to make sure that we flush out all the details, and work session seems like it makes sense.
That's all I have.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Trustee Williams?
So I attended a open space advisory committee meeting last week, and it was a very good meeting, and we had a great collaboration among the members, and we, not myself, but the committee members voted a new chair, and so our new chair is Margaret Parrish, so congratulations to her. Also went to a Dr. Cog, Denver Regional Council of Governments short course where they try to teach you about transportation, the hierarchy and category of funds for transportation in the Metro Denver area, and how it's awarded, and the point system that they create for that. It's very complicated. Actually, when you go through the course, you're thinking, oh, this is, I can get a grasp of this. But then when it comes in your Dr. Cog packets, it doesn't look the same, nor does it act the same, and the council meetings don't quite go the way you anticipate them to go. So it turns out to be a very complicated process. And so this is the second time I have been through their short course, and I've noticed other members, Dr. Cog members, do the same thing. They come pretty much every year, so you can learn a little bit more each time. I also went to an HOA election, and this was the follow-up election from the one that was a tie, and there was, a final vote and a winner, and I kind of felt that the process was not exactly what I'd call a model election. Hopefully that doesn't occur in the future.
Can I ask why? Because why was that?
It seemed like a crucifixion of one of the candidates, and it didn't seem a very fair process. At least that's my opinion on that.
I would take that's the candidate did not win. Yeah, okay.
And I think that when you attack someone's character during an election, I think that that is not a very fair process for residents and for the candidates that you're running against. But that's...
Welcome to American politics.
I realize that. That's everywhere, but, yeah. At least it's only the HOA.
That's everywhere.
I also went to a town board retreat, and we had a great moderator. Her name was Kathy Novak, and I felt that we had a very incredible meeting that, for me, sort of brought things full circle as far as being on the town board. And I'm very excited to continue forward and working with all of you in the manner that we discussed. And thanks for participating in that town board retreat. It was a very, very good meeting. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I'll just go, if that's all right. So I agree the town board retreat was very helpful, and I think we'll have another one coming up here in the next little while. Thank you to the assistant town manager for going to Washington, D.C. to help lobby for transportation funds. I am going to not go this year, and so I appreciate her hard work on that. I had a nice meeting with one of the Boulder County commissioners where the TIF issue came up and how Boulder County might not be getting some of their money that they would otherwise anticipate coming from the urban renewal area. I had a nice back and forth about how we actually have built the marketplace and they are generating a whole bunch of property tax off of that. So, but I suspect that we'll be getting, when the town center project continues to move forward, that we'll be getting more communication from them. So.
I hope you reminded them, Andrew, that we expect them to support us in return on issues important to us.
It was one of the topics of conversation. Let's see, then U.S. 36 mayors and commissioners, as well as Metro mayors, has been discussing the fast tracks issue, specifically what to do about the rail. Once again, that we've talked about this before, and Trustee Williams brought it up, but there's still, the issues are whether or not to proceed with a ballot question to raise the tax to expedite the completion of the fast track system. I believe that RTD will be discussing this at their second meeting in March, so, and that we'll be weighing in with them by the 1st of that month. So the issues are, you know, should rail be included in the fast tracks as it was initially envisioned, with the understanding that that's now a $1.7 billion project, and whether or not that makes financial sense anymore. Whether or not there should be some early implementation of the improvements in those areas, but just have BRT run from them until there's enough funding for the rail to get to those communities, or whether or not to scrap the rail altogether, and that's an ongoing conversation. And my gut feeling is that RTD is going to recommend scrapping the rail, but that's just a guess on my part.
So how do the other members feel?
In the U.S. 30, so Metro Mayors has not weighed in on that particular issue, although I think that they are cognizant of the price escalation for the rail, and I think since it doesn't affect their corridors mostly, that there will be a lot of push to get rid of the rail and just implement BRT. Along the corridor, there's a mixed opinion. Louisville, Westminster feel very strongly that they need the rail because they don't have any other way to access their rail, what would be their rail centers with BRT, so that they feel pretty strong that the rail needs to be a part of the component. Boulder County, City of Boulder, and Broomfield are more open to maybe getting rid of the rail, since it probably doesn't impact them as much. And as I've mentioned before, I've taken a neutral position on that, since that's I think, been the board's position. And if you feel otherwise, make sure you let me know. But I'm continuing being neutral on that discussion. Trustee Pennington.
I'm not neutral on it. So So I don't know when the board achieved neutrality on it. Maybe it was before I came.
No, it was just...
Was it recently?
Just in the discussions that I've had. This is why I always tried to bring it up, that
Right.
it's neutral, and if the board has a strong opinion...
If I'm
to
correct,
communicate.
and correct me if I'm wrong, we've paid that tax component with the attitude that it would extend north to Boulder, north to Longmont, through Louisville, et cetera. So we've paid that. Our taxpayers have paid that. And now it's being scrapped because of the high cost for the rest of the program, which we happen to be in geographically. And I think pressure needs to be put on them for equity purposes that, hey, we paid into it fair and square, and just because we're at the tail end and not at the beginning shouldn't mean we don't get what we paid for. So that's my stance based on the presentations I've been to on it. I don't know how the whole board feels.
Well, and I think it depends on if you feel the commuter rail is going to help our town center or not, or is the BRT corridor off of 36 going to help the town center, which means if we're neutral and they completely scrap the commuter rail, are they going to put money into the BRT corridor?
Right, so that
It's a and/or,
they
right?
committed to roughly $900 million to the BRT corridor.
But where does that BRT corridor necessarily stop? And how, we have to really be
right,
deliberate
so
about
I think
Yes.
so it gets back to the point that I think there was something in the paper from me about fast tracks, which I think that there's way too much question right now about how BRT would be envisioned specifically, that we should weigh in one way or the other.
Right.
In general, yes, it would go from Denver Union Station to Boulder, down, actually probably, and mostly at Table Mesa, but then there would be component down the diagonal to Longmont. But that is, there's nowhere near any level of specificity of what that would actually look like.
I just wanted to get out there that I may be the sole one who cares about the train
Rail.
at this point, but or light rail, whatever.
Yeah, and to be
But I
clear,
wanted
it's
to
not,
put it out there.
that's the problem, is because it's not light rail, the headways are 30 minutes, and this is going to be a DMU, I believe is
Right.
what they call it, so it's actually a heavy rail system, so it doesn't have the same frequency that the
Right.
light rail would otherwise
I was
have.
just going to mention that. The BRT corridor, the buses would be a lot faster from Superior to downtown Denver, or vice versa, than it would be the commuter rail.
Right.
So I think the fact that we've already paid into it, and the whole collective Metro Denver has already paid into it, if that is going to be reallocated for the BRT corridor, then I think we still benefit. So it's a fine line whether we're neutral or not, because either way we pick, we can't determine what would be the better option for us at this point.
Well, thus is, since I think that there hasn't been unanimity on the board for sure, and I don't, maybe not enough even background, that's why I've been neutral on it, but once again, I'm happy to deliver any message that you want me to deliver to the regional community, regional activities that I participate in, but...
While I agree that it seems unfair that we've paid in and not getting what we paid for, we have to pay so much more to get rail that I'm not sure I see a direct benefit for us unless somehow it gives enough relief to 36 to make that a much better commuting solution. That remains to be seen. I'd rather, seems like BRT is, for us, a much better option, but without knowing specifics of what's going on with the BRT as well, it's kind of hard to, when I saw the newspaper coverage of the meeting that you were in, and it was very clear where, Louisville, and I thought Boulder was somewhat, well, no, they were open-minded, but I thought they were building a rail transportation center, that's kind of significant to them. The rail's not going to be anywhere near us unless you drive somewhere over to Louisville, 95th Street, I think, or something like that. So I think while it's nice to say we need to get what we paid for, we're not going to get what we paid for unless we pay a whole lot more. So I'm not sure if that makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure a tax would pass either.
I think that's a very concerning issue, because I think many people share your viewpoint that the taxing something that you don't even know what exactly it's going to be is going to be a tough sell. So
Especially when the last tax was supposed to pay for it all. And
yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of anger out there about that.
Well, I think,
Go ahead.
I think the crux of the issue here is in the fast tracks, we never got light rail up here anyway. So we're not benefiting in the whole realm of what fast tracks was meant to be. So,
it's a whole different definition of tracks.
yeah, exactly.
These slow tracks. So town staff, once again, I appreciate town staff participating in these. There's a charrette process going on right now that will help to clarify exactly what the BRT might look like. And so there should be some more information coming into the future, and I'm having a positive head nod that information will be happening, but I don't think there's enough information yet to be able to share that yet. So, okay, let's see. Also with Metro Mayors, we discussed the governor's TBD tour, which surrounds transportation issues as well as education funding. I believe that there will be 40 of these meetings that will be occurring. So when we know when that occurs in this area, we need to make sure that we notify our residents through whatever means we need to do that, in case they can participate in those meetings.
And what did you call those?
The governor calls it TBD, for to be determined, because they're trying to take everything available. My guess is what the end result, and maybe I'm being a little I'm not sure what the term would be, but I believe that they'll be looking for a tax for roads and for education, but that's just a guess on my part. Let's see, the town hosted, I think, a very interesting interchange open house that many of us attended, that there will be more information coming about what the costs will look like and how they will benefit in terms of traffic and whatnot. I don't know if Mr. Manager, do you know what the timeline is? It was published there, but I don't remember what the next step was.
Looks like the next public meeting is going to be sometime in March, and then final selection by Louisville and us in April of a preferred alternative.
And part of that selection process will be cost and
Yes.
how well it works,
Yeah.
and
Service levels,
construction
cost.
levels, and what would happen during construction, all that.
Right.
And once again, I guess I'm going to strongly recommend that the baseline would be what the loop would have provided in terms of service and how these would compare to them.
Definitely,
So
yep.
you can make sure that that gets shared with the consultant, that would be
Yeah, and they've
helpful.
already received that information. So.
I believe that several of us
It'll be hard
delivered
to
a
miss.
message during the meeting.
Well,
Yes.
that's still the criteria in the
We've been
IGA. Is
Right, yeah.
It's never been taken out.
Yep, Trustee
Will we
Hanson.
discuss that again as a board, the
We
three
should.
options? And
We
the-
should. We should when,
I agree.
before,
Once we
need to
have
enough
the
lead to be able to do that.
additional information, as far as service levels, cost, that type of stuff, we can have that board discussion.
Okay. Sorry, just then a question for the town manager. Do you have any more, well, I'm not asking you to answer this tonight. Can we get some update about how the Go request system is working, and just maybe
sure.
like in the next weekly update? That would be helpful. And I was going to ask this, although it's now coming offline, but how much in the consultant's contracts that we'll be discussing tonight could be performed by an employee within the town of Superior, and would there be any benefit in terms of costs if that was to be brought into house. Once again, you don't need to necessarily address that particular issue tonight, but if maybe in the weekly digest that would be helpful.
Okay.
That's all I had. Trustee Skumatz.
I have a couple of things. I attended the retreat like everybody else, and I also attended the interchange public meeting with the mayor, trustees Hanson and Sorelli, and myself. And it was informative, and I was disappointed that the loop wasn't explicitly considered, and I was really glad that the mayor clarified that that was going to be a base case. And I thought they did a lot of hand-waving on it, and they did clarify that option and why it wasn't in the finals, and gave good descriptions of the double diamond and the multiple left and other options. I was really disappointed that we didn't see any Louisville council members there. I thought that would be a nice show of support to the thing, and I was really disappointed that not one of them showed up. And I guess I'll wait and see on I guess I'll wait and see whether they come up with some options that, to me, the service won't be the same if we have to stop. That's kind of my bottom line, so we'll see what they come up with. I attended a meeting of the Consortium of Cities where they discussed the transportation sales tax projects that were underway in the future and in the county. The ones that were involving Superior have been mostly done. They were mostly trails issues, so almost all of the things upcoming are for other communities in the county. In that case, we ended up sort of on the early end, I guess, as opposed to the later end, so that's always a positive thing. The RCAC committee finished the survey and prepared a memo for, I think, the next board meeting.
No, actually, that went in the digest,
Okay.
last week's digest, and then the next
the
board
discussion.
meeting would be consideration of a contract with the trash company.
With this, yeah. But, I mean, it's up on the next board meeting. Okay. And I had 3 questions for staff to answer. One is, I'm not sure, I looked at the look-ahead, and I'm not seeing the zero-waste work session, and I'm not seeing the green building codes work sessions. And maybe they're on there, but I looked a couple times, and I can't find them. And the third is, I'd really like to see I'd really like a clarification either in a meeting here or elsewhere on exactly what this new the changes on the bike race and what that means for our control over the bike race and that sort of thing, the way it was covered in the paper, the way the information, it wasn't really clear to me. So
Okay.
Great.
I was worried about it possibly losing control.
Trustee Sorelli.
Well, just real quick, I mean, on the bike race, the promoter's going to be running the race. We will help coordinate with CDOT and State Patrol and advertisement and blocking off our roadways and stuff like that, but the actual coordination of the race will be by the promoter.
But we still own it, basically.
I mean, yeah, we still have the trademark for it. I mean, if next year, if we wanted to run the race, we could.
And I'm not saying it's bad that it's part of this thing, but this larger thing, but I didn't want it to become just one leg in another thing. I wanted it to stay something big and separate and whatever, so, okay.
Thank you. Trustee Sorelli.
Okay, in addition to the meetings that we've all attended that have been discussed already, I did attend a Rocky Flats Stewardship Council meeting a week ago today, so last Monday. And it was kind of business of the first meeting of the year kind of thing where new officers were elected. Lisa Morzell is going to be the chairperson this year, starting this last meeting. Bob Briggs moved, I think, to secretary, treasurer, or vice chairperson. I can't remember that. And we have a new secretary treasurer, too. And the first reading of the changed bylaws were in effect. The second review will take place in our April meeting, and then there'll be the bylaws. And if you remember, that changed the maximum number of directors up to 14 and changed our quorum and our number of votes necessary to do action to accommodate the 3 new members to the Stewardship Council. And we agreed on our meetings for the next year, which kind of track with the same meetings, same dates as we had this past year of April, June, I think September, November. And so it's pretty much routine business. And the Department of Energy gave their quarterly report, which had some, actually, the information that was interesting, or that might be interesting, did not get highlighted too well in the meeting there, but recent email traffic indicates that there may have been elevated plutonium and americium levels in the downstream of the dam breach area, and these were points of evaluation, not points of compliance, so they haven't violated anything yet, but they're having to figure out what's going on, and it's a cause for concern. This would be a surface water cause for concern, so it's of great concern to the downstreamers, for sure.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Has it been elevated every single month since last summer, or no? Do they
I
know
couldn't
that?
tell you that.
You don't know? Okay.
I couldn't tell you that. There's stuff I don't understand in there,
Oh, certainly I don't either.
pretty much, most of it.
Yeah, it's so scientific, it's unreadable.
Well, let's make sure we build a road out there.
Yeah, well, that's and make it catch the water.
Okay.
Maybe flow north and south. Anyway, I would like to extend my compliments to the town on a great job of snow removal during our challenge.
Those guys did, yeah.
That was a big storm.
Yeah.
That was a big deal, and I can't tell you how nice it is when I visit other communities and they're not cleaned up anywhere near as well as we are. And we actually have trails I can run on, even though they're cement, but I mean,
Yeah.
it'll be a long time before our soft trails are good, but it's quite a nice bonus. I know that's an extra penny while we can afford it. It's not a guarantee, but it sure is nice when that happens.
And I think our staff takes pride in the fact that they do such an exceptional job.
They hit a home run. I mean, trails were clear Saturday morning, if not Friday afternoon. A lot of them were. That was super. That's all I have.
Trustee Henson.
Yeah, I attended a Boulder Valley School District Budget Advisory Committee meeting, and much of our conversation had to do with Senate Bill 191 and how teachers and principals will be evaluated, and then how they'll be compensated based on those evaluations. So there's enough questions, unanswered questions, in the next meeting. We're going to meet with Human Resources personnel to explain a little bit more detail about Senate Bill 191. Let's see, I attended the 36 McCaslin Interchange meeting. A lot of good questions, really good turnout. Board retreat. One thing about the board retreat, are we going to receive some follow-up?
Yeah, I saw Kathy at my conference this last week, and she said she was finalizing those. So I expect to have them this week, her notes on that. So.
Okay. I also attended the HOA board meeting last Tuesday, and plan on attending more of those in the future, and I would encourage more residents to attend those. Really, it's just the board members that have that meeting, and there's no attendance there. I would encourage more people to show up. And then snow plowing, yeah, I agree with Trustee Sorella that there's a big difference between Superior and Louisville. When you go over the highway into Louisville, our roads were much cleaner, so it was very noticeable. One question I do have, though, sidewalks near Colton and Rock Creek Parkway along Horizons. I'm assuming Horizons is responsible for that. Is it all the way down to Rock Creek Parkway? Because someone cleared it, but there's about a 50-foot stretch that's cleared, and it's been uncleared for...
Yeah, it's Horizons, and it's we have a number of those areas where the sidewalks get cleared, and we have it on the other side of Rock Creek,
Then the
across
plow-
from
then the
Horizons.
plows come.
And then the plows come by, and, because they want to clear up to the bike lane, and so they pitch it back onto the sidewalk, so then we go back out and clear it off the sidewalks. So we get to those areas as quick as we can, but
Okay.
typically that's what, and it sounds like we just need to have a follow-up discussion with
Yeah, it's
Horizons.
kind of iced over, and it's
Yeah.
undulating, and it's
Yeah.
not real safe.
So we'll give them a call tomorrow.
Can I add to your thing real quick? And we have the same issue with Boulder Valley School District's schools that are in our town, Superior Elementary and El Dorado K through 8. There's sidewalk that fronts their building, and since they have a new superintendent of operations, we're working out with Boulder Valley School District and the town as who's the responsibility and how that is going to be either shared or worked out one way or another. We had a good agreement with the previous operations manager, and I'm assuming that meeting will be happening very soon. So in case anyone is concerned about that not being plowed, it's being worked on.
And then, Matt, thank you very much for having the website updated with the vendor payment link. One thing that I'm wondering, can we see the history of it? Because I went on one day, and you could see the transaction. It looked like it was just for one day, and then the next day it was totally different. So is there a way that we can see each post as a PDF, and we can just click on that one and...
I'm not sure. I'll have to talk to Paul and his staff and see what we
Okay.
can do there.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
John, Matt, Trustee Pennington?
I just wanted to follow up, so I'll do that.
On the personnel side, we have hired Alex Arnello as our new superintendent of public works, so he'll start on Friday. So I'm happy to have him on staff.
I had the same question, kind of what Andrew was asking. When I saw that, and then I was wondering how that will play into some of the projects that we have. Will he be able to take on some of that responsibility?
He will be able to take on some of it. And we'll just have to work out on his workload and how much he can take on and is able to I mean, probably the field inspections, it's not likely. More of the overall management of the projects, he'll take on. So you'll see a decrease in the amount of use we have with the consultants now that we have a full staff on board and he's on, but we'll still need to have those third-party consultants help us with preparing bids and giving us construction estimates and doing the inspections and the warranty work, so we'll still need that to some degree. Let's see, we have a vacancy on the recycling committee. Our Tina Thomas, who the board just recently appointed, is moving out of town, so she doesn't feel like she can sit on the committee, so that is vacant again. And then ProStack has a vacancy. Lloyd Linnell, for personal just time commitments, has resigned, so we have a vacancy on that committee as well. So we'll look to start getting those advertised and filled. And then we received 11 responses to the comprehensive plan update RFP that went out, so we're reviewing those right now. Hope to have something for the board to consider on February 27th. The Ridge Soft Trail connection, which was between basically the water treatment plant entrance road to Rock Creek Parkway, is completed. And then at the Open Space Advisory Committee, it sounds like they didn't get through all of their resolution. I don't think they got to their resolution for this new organization part that we're looking at. And it sounded like they were wanting another month to review. So I don't know how the board feels about giving the committees more time, or if Trustee Pennington or Williams has any comments on.
Well, the discussion, as I understood, since they meet so early in the month, because what is your meeting date?
Oh, it's the second Wednesday of the month for
For open
OSAC,
space, yeah.
And they wanted to discuss, after ProStack discusses how the open space piece fits
With that committee.
with that
right.
committee. And so they wanted to come back after that and discuss that as well. It's, it's especially with any feedback that ProStack should have.
I don't want them, doesn't seem like we should force them to do something that they won't feel comfortable with, so I don't think that,
I don't know if it's impending disaster if we
Yeah.
wait.
Okay. I think that was it for me.
Town attorney,
Nothing for me, thanks.
town clerk? All right, thank you, that brings us to, oh.
Can I, two
sorry,
questions?
trustee Thompson.
One comment, one question. This is, that our efficient snow removal is both good and bad. The good part is we've got efficient snow removal. The potentially law of unintended consequences is customer outrage when we're not able to get to those Tier 3s in a future snowstorm. So I was just going to suggest in the Sentinel that we actually extol the virtues of getting to Tier 3 and inform residents that this may not always happen.
Yeah, and we had posted to the website
Okay.
our snow removal plan and procedures, and so we could do an article in the
I actually
newsletter.
had a Tier 3 street friend who had a little bit of a complaint, and I said, whoa here. So after I explained you're a Tier 3 street and you should be appreciative, she became very appreciative. She didn't quite know she was a Tier 3 street customer. The second thing is on the trash contract, just point of order on that. Is it going to come forth as a specific recommendation for a specific carrier? So the question...
Yeah, I mean, the carrier is Waste Connections.
Can the Waste Connections provide any of those services in there? Because I did want to discuss, we're still going to have the option of discussing A, B, C, and D as the alternatives.
Well, staff will bring forward, unless I hear otherwise, with option A, based on the survey results.
Okay. So, yeah, I thought it merited more discussion based on the survey results, so as long as we have the opportunity for discussion then.
Okay. Anything else? Not, brings us to item number 5, public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items, realizing that multiple of these have been removed, so.
Good evening, Board. George Kuckner, Superior, Colorado. I had a citizen ask me a question, Mayor, and I'll ask you directly if we'll get this out of the way. If you are anticipating running for a state office in the near future,
Am I?
I would ask.
Fantastic question.
True or false?
Yeah, have absolutely zero interest in doing that, so hopefully that is as clear as possible.
You what now?
Have zero interest in doing that.
Okay.
Are you looking to be his campaign manager?
I'll change my mind.
Next thing, I have a recommendation for the newsletter, which we call Superior Speak, Superior Centennial, or whatever you have. I noticed that when it was originally formed 2 years ago, or started, it was supposed to be for what the board has done, what the board is doing, and what the board is doing in the future. We have no reports of what the board is doing in the future. It's like the 10 acres that stuck by us over here. I would like to recommend, we have 7 council members, 6 council members, along with the mayor. I'd like to see a change there, instead of just the mayor's picture being on the front page and his comments, that we rotate this amongst the council members. In a period of probably 4 years, they might get, 4 or 5 times a picture, so we'd know who each council member is along with the mayor. I mean, it'd be nice
I'm not
You
personally
understand where I'm
wedded. I
coming-
mean,
you
it's
understand where I'm coming
typically
from?
how
I'd like
towns
to
do
see
it, but, yep, I'm
More
not personally wedded to anything.
more comments from the board in this newsletter. Okay? If we can work that out. It should be able to be worked out. Next thing is, big thing to me, is I seen 7 hands raised up for an annexation, or I mean for a jump start, as one of the board members said, for the town getting in a land agreement with a developer on the 10-acre parcel on a Biela Menkick property. I purchased a piece of property in this town years ago, annexed the town, paid for it, and I didn't see no jump start for Kuffner subdivision, which they classify me as a developer. So I feel that other people should have the same opportunity which you're presenting to the jump start over across the road. Just a little fact and figure here. We county own 1.75 acres of property right across the road, which we have a detention pond on at the present time that supplies the ponds that run across the road. And I don't know if he was here or not, Mayor, but at that time the attorney convinced the town board that they owned it, so the town went ahead and put the ponds over there. Well, in the end of it, the story here is the town ended up paying for $700,000 worth of paving, was either from Rock Creek or Colton. I'd have to go back in the deal and just bring this up. That we had to pay $700,000 for a paving job for what we done across the road with a detention pond. This has been a few years back. We're talking $700,000 for 1.75 acres. We're talking over across the road that the town paid $10,000 an acre, and we're turning around 2 years later and giving it to a land developer for the same amount of money to jumpstart the infrastructure over there. I can't see this. We didn't do that to the Superior Marketplace. We didn't do it to the Plaza. We didn't do it for Ouida. We didn't do it for Rock Creek when they started. We did not jumpstart them. They paid for their own properties, the land developers. And it bothers me for this board to sit there and give away taxpayers' property to a land developer. And I don't care what, it's wrong. There should have been more consideration for the taxpayers' money here. And I think you ought to look into it a little further.
Okay, thank you. Additional public comments? Seeing none, that brings us to item number 6, presentations. And this evening, I am happy to say that the Superior Chamber of Commerce will provide an update. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Heather Craycraft, Executive Director of the Superior Chamber of Commerce, and thank you for the time. Thank you to Chris Hansen, working with my Board of Directors to secure us some time on the agenda, and I promise to keep it short and sweet unless you have more questions for me. Just since this is our first time and we will be giving you an update each month, a variety of board members, I hope to take this role, so you won't have to hear from me each month. But just to give you an update of what the Superior Chamber is up to at this time, we are in the process of finishing up our renewals currently to a wonderful group of 175 chamber members. And just to give you a short kind of snippet of what it costs to be a chamber member, if I can share a little advertisement with you, it's for a standard membership, it's $225 for the year. So for a lot of our discussions when we're talking about home-based businesses or small businesses, all the way up to our great large companies that do reside here, the basis of a payment of $225 is a great investment in our community. And I believe through our outreach and really partnership with the town, it's a great expense that they give to us to use in good faith, basically, to build the environment in which a great business thrives here in Superior. Based on those renewals, we are finishing up our annual directory, which is the guide that we use to mail to all the residents in the community as well to all the business owners. We print between 5,000 and 6,000 issues of that, and they are mailed, so I'm hoping, and I can put it, I guess, on the record now, that they will hit the mailboxes by March 1st. It's a document that the town uses for anyone that calls as a new resident or potential resident or business owner looking to move to the community. So we're putting the final touches on that. As well, just a few business updates. We talked about Sears opening. We did have a great ribbon cutting, and thank you both to Trustee Pennington and Trustee Gregorius for joining us bright and early on a snowy, cold morning. We did have approximately 15 chamber members, a few family members included in that number, that came out and I believe had a great tour, really, of their facility, which we're very excited to have next door to some other new businesses in town, too. So. And then the other one I wanted to touch on is Levy Salon, is our salon that's been located in Rock Creek Village, just kind of store-hopped to a new location, so we're really excited for them down in Rock Creek Village next to Rock Creek Wine Spirits. So they have relocated, and we're in the process of helping them get that word out, and we'll be doing an event with them in April. So I will make sure you guys all get invited. And the last bit I just wanted to touch on is, with all the transportation discussions, a lot of activity going on in our neighborhood. We have a great relationship with 36 Community Solutions, which is a great resource for anyone in the community that might have questions on a lot of this stuff that seems very confusing and so many different options. But part of that relationship is we're working on some great marketing pieces to try to really complement and supplement what the town's giving the residents and the business owners as far as information as we go down the path of any changes to 36 and any transportation challenges we might have in the future.
Great, thank you very much, and we really appreciate all your hard work. Questions, Trustee Skumatz?
How'd your flash mob go?
We did have a flash mob on Friday night at Superior Liquor. I believe there were about 6 or 7 people that stopped by. But it's good. That's a good thing. It's a quick notification, and anytime they're trying maybe beverages, I should say, we try to get the word out. So it was a...
How do I get on that list?
I'll make sure
At me.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Trustee
quick
Hanson.
question. Matt, are we going to try and have a roundtable meeting with the chamber board, our board?
Yeah, we were looking at a dinner, similar to what we do with other committees.
Yeah. that'd be
Yeah,
good.
and then I think the invitation is still open for any of the board members to attend your director's monthly meeting if they would like.
correct. And I believe I've roped Trustee Hansen into being our first one at the end of the month, coming to our meeting to represent. So.
Great, thank you very much. Anything else? All right, that brings us to item number 7, consent agenda, and remaining on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of the January 23rd, 2011 Board of Trustees meeting, acceptance of the minutes of the Historical Commission, the Open Space Advisory Committee, and the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee meetings, approval of a liquor license renewal for Sushi Yoshi Restaurant, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Superior Maintenance for emergency and general maintenance and repair services, and approval of a liquor license application for Rock Creek Sports Grill LLC. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda by Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Williams. Discussion. Phyllis.
Cirilli?
Yes.
Gregorius?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Buckle?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Skumatz?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Great, thanks very much. That passes. So that brings us to what was 7D. Trustee Williams, do you want to discuss these all together, or do you want to do them individually?
I'd like to do 7D individually, but I'm happy to do,
E and F?
yes.
G and I? Okay.
No, yeah, E and G, we can do together,
Okay.
unless someone...
Jeff can be put in there as well.
Okay, E, F, and G together, D separate and I separate.
Okay, so we'll start what was 7D, adoption of resolutions for the Town of Superior, Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, and Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District, improving amendment to the purchasing policy. Trustee Williams?
So, hold on, I am scrolling to get to the information here. Here we go. Under 5C, it's called exceptions, and I kind of thought that maybe there should be some kind of language that states that a personnel issue does not rise to the level of an emergency expenditure, therefore it can't be an exception.
Is there some wording in here that covers that?
I think, I mean, in my mind, 5E makes that clear, but, I mean, if the board wants, we can add something to C, but I think E makes it pretty clear.
Does anybody else feel that way?
It does include the word all, settlement and severance payments, so I'd ask Kendra to weigh in. Does all mean it cannot be done on an emergency
Yes.
basis?
Yes.
Fair enough? That was all I had.
Trustee Skumatz?
I did have a question about B. And if we're going to go with the sole source purchase, do we have to have anything like pros and cons, or under what? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, in the staff memo to the board, we would cover that, pros and cons and the reasons why we went with the sole source.
Thanks.
Additional discussion? Trustee Pennington?
I actually have a couple of things here. Under 3A and B, for process regarding quotes, process regarding requests for bids and proposals, that says generally for purchases and sets forth a policy. Then down in the table on the next page, under those same categories, it says a minimum of 3 required quotes. So I have a
Well, there
little...
might be an instance where we have a sole source.
That's under the exceptions.
So in that case, we wouldn't have a
Okay.
minimum of.
As long as we make clear that the table prevails. To me, it was unclear, which one would prevail when. So I just needed it to be clear as to when it prevailed.
It doesn't.
In generally or a minimum of are required. Those don't say the same thing to me. Am I somehow confused here?
Well, so for instance, purchases 2,000 and up would require a minimum of 3 bids, unless there's some instance where we're going to sole source that
Okay.
product, yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I just want to be
Yeah.
clear that
I see what you're saying. What you're saying, not regarding sole source contracts, I think
Right.
what you're saying is that 3A and B are not necessarily in that,
I don't like the word generally.
I agree with you.
Get rid of the word generally in both cases, and I'm happy.
Consistent with the table. The table
Correct.
says they are required.
Right.
The language says generally.
Which means we could do what we want,
Right.
right? So I would
All you
like to
have
get
to
rid
do
of the word
is
generally.
delete generally
Yes.
Right.
and 4.
Do you
Just
generally
start
not
with
like that word?
Purchases between.
Generally do not like that word. Right.
Yes.
Okay,
That's easy enough.
okay,
Yeah.
good enough.
I agree.
Then, just a sec here.
Can I revisit something? Sorry.
I just don't see how, if we don't get 3 bids back, I don't know what we do.
3 quotes.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
Then let's add specific language for that, rather than make the entire table general.
Yeah.
And can I, instead of having the attorney draft this evening, can we have that come back, but make sure that everybody's issues are addressed?
Sure.
Under 3C, where it says 3C regarding advertising, to solicit bids, it says, at a minimum, all formal bids and RFPs will be advertised in at least one of the following locations, and one of those bullets is electronic purchasing websites. Just a question, why is that not always done? When would we not advertise on electronic purchasing websites? Are they not-
on the electronic version, it could be a timing thing. I mean, that's the one thing that I can think of off the top of my head as a timing
Yeah.
issue.
To me, perhaps the old regulation was drafted at a time where electronic accessibility wasn't where we are
I
today.
think it gives us some flexibility to use one or all of these, which will give us the most likelihood of success in
Right.
getting proposals in.
Right. I guess I don't see when electronic websites would not give us the most likelihood of success. I'd like to actually see that as required. If an electronic website serves that industry, which I assume it does, that it always must be used for publication of our RFPs, et cetera. And to me, then, the newspapers and the other publications become secondary. Just because, one, it's cheap, it's broad, it's instant, so...
That makes sense, right? Electronic first, newspaper second.
Okay.
Why don't you just put in some language, whenever possible, all three sources will be used? You know, and if it gives you a little bit of liberty in case you can't do it for some reason that you can't decide right now.
The problem with the two other sources is they're expensive. To advertise this stuff in anything print has a cost component, so I didn't necessarily want to tie staff into that more expensive. I wanted to be able to, electronic is also typically the most efficient, so it has all kinds of advantages over the other two. So my intent was simply to require that and leave it up to the staff's good judgment whenever else it might be advisable to go into the print publications.
And typically, we tried to get it out to as many people as possible, so we typically will do all three, but, I mean, I can't think of it, and if this come back to the board, I'll talk to my staff about it, but I don't think that's an issue.
Okay. If I can go to D, the last sentence is, formal bids will be solicited at least every 4 years, if not more frequently, as determined by the town manager. The question is, should we also add the clause, or requested by the town board? I think that's the implication there. Or is it not?
The town manager will always do whatever the board tells the
Right.
town manager to do, so
Right. So you don't think that language is
I don't
necessary?
think so.
I will concede that then. Going to, right under the table on page 3, which is right below 4A, we added language, which I support, that says splitting purchases to circumvent this policy is prohibited. I think that's great, but I would add the clause, or programs. Splitting purchases or programs to circumvent this policy is prohibited.
What do you...
The only thing with this is this is only a purchasing.
Well, sometimes there will, there's a difference between a purchase and a program. For example, the sign program is a program, but the approval of that entire program may not go to the board if, in fact, we buy one sign at each of 3 different time periods. So that is fundamentally different than the purchase of a single item.
What do you mean by signed program?
Well, I'll use as an example the Town of Superior signage that was going to go in throughout the community, I guess. I didn't believe I saw that as a program put before the town board of, let's say, $30,000 for the program. And I thought that should come before the town board as I don't want to just use me as an example rather than factual there, but let's say that were a program, a $30,000 program to augment the signs in the community, as opposed to putting a 10,000 sign here at this point in time in the budget, et cetera, et cetera. So I think adding the word "or program" actually covers us both for that purchase that may be over 25 and could be divided into two 12,500 each, as well as a program that could be subdivided into two parts.
I see that specific example as just a straight-out purchase. So I think it's covered.
Well, let's say when you retire in 35 years, I'm trying to make good, well-stated policy here. Will everybody see it the same way? Or does it hurt to have the word "or" programs in there in terms of clarity?
I think it creates some, in my mind, it creates some confusion if to add the word "program."
I'm willing to go with the majority here.
I agree with what you're saying, Sandy. I just don't think we define program anywhere.
Okay.
And that's
Should we,
well,
in your
maybe,
opinion?
But I'm not sure where, that's kind of...
I don't want to split hairs here if everybody
No, I
else
think
thinks it is covered under purchases.
I think
good
it's,
with the way it is.
And program almost fits more into the budgetary process, and,
It makes it more confusing to me.
but I wish because I hear what you're saying, and we brought this up in the retreat as well, and I think we're accomplishing what we want with saying no splitting purchases right now among all of us, but I think we need to look at somewhere down the road maybe or something, how we want to include definitions of project or program and build that theory, build that concept in. And maybe it's in the budgetary process, but that still will not avoid incremental purchasing, which is what your concern is.
So how would you deal
But if we throw the
with it, Joe?
word program in there now, it's not going to be clear down the road. I think it's not going to be clear to the reader what we're talking about. That's a problem.
Anybody else? I'm willing to go forth if I'm in the minority. So I will go forth?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go forth. How about 5D? Non-budgeted purchases. It says, if I can read it, any non-budgeted purchase in excess of $15,000 will require Board of Trustees approval. I think where we fell into a little bit of a weird situation this past year was, in fact, one could contend that a particular purchase was budgeted in some broad class of projects, and then others of us contended, no, it needed to be more narrowly defined rather than put into a broad class. So I would be more comfortable in this particular line item to say any purchases in excess of $15,000 that do not have a specific line item budget will require Board of Trustees approval. What I mean by that is if it's not, for example, new stoplight at intersection of this and that, and it's more than $15K, we got to approve it, as opposed to it fitting into some broad traffic signal program, and thus be able to go forth without us approving it. So I think the intent of this item is to be very specific in a line item way.
I looked to Paul to see what kind of issues that might create for the budget creation as we go through the process, if any.
just so long as the line item means that the explanation note associated with the line item is included in that.
Or other wording, specific item rather than a broader class. You get my point, Paul, I think?
Paul Nellis, Town Staff. So let me try to clarify it for my little mind here. We have many many capital items that are very specific intersection projects. We have an item, for example, this evening, as we're going to talk about our color program, that is embedded into a larger item, a grounds maintenance line item. Within that grounds maintenance item, we have $250,000 budget, and we have a $20,000, so one budget line item for grounds maintenance. But embedded within there are a number of specific programs. One may be a $20,000 color program. So
What are you saying? I'm not getting that word.
color, it's a $20,000 color program, or a $20,000
But it's
monument
embedded
sign.
in that line item.
Right.
So as clarification for staff, or would you be saying in that particular case, since it's not specifically called out in the budget, that would require board approval or not?
I'm not understanding your example.
So,
Are
yeah.
you saying COLOR?
Yeah, and the
Flowers.
flowers.
Oh, color. Okay, flower, I get.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm just trying to avoid is where staff may feel they don't have to get the approval, but the board says, whoa, this should have come before us because we didn't want that traffic. It should have come before us, let's say, using the traffic light. We don't want to be surprised by that traffic light going in at 14,999 because it fit into a broader signalization program. So that, I'm more comfortable with that example, Paul. I can,
So, in that
Yeah.
example,
so I'm just trying to have us get
so we
it
have this
specific
broad,
enough.
let's say we have a broad budget line item for traffic signal improvements. And then embedded in that would be the specific projects.
Correct.
Are you
I'm good
okay
with that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm fine. Does anybody else, I'm just majority here. Anybody else want that specificity?
Just so long as it includes the embedded information. Otherwise, if we put all,
Right.
if we start doing subsets of that,
Oh,
the
no.
budget.
As long as it's
document will be
specifically
5,000
detailed
pages long.
somewhere, I think staff is covered and there's no expectation from the
So,
board.
So what's the additional language?
do we need additional language then?
Well, I think it needs to be, clarified what non-budgeted means. So I think we need some better language, because I think some of us were quite, taken aback this year, and I'd like to avoid that situation.
So I guess you could come back when this comes back as to what a definition of non-budgeted is.
I'm fine with that. I'll go to the addition of E on the last page. Under severance and settlement payments, all settlement and severance payments, regardless of amount, require Board of Trustees review prior to execution. I like the word approval. Is there a distinction between review and approval?
From my perspective, I would prefer not to have the discussion in an open meeting when it comes to personnel matters, and if the board needs to approve it, then it would have to be in a public meeting.
Yeah, I think it's a very slippery slope when we start doing personnel issues at the board level. It's good that we get the information, but I'm not sure where we would then stop.
And you don't believe in the case of settlement or severance payments that should occur? I don't have any problem doing it in executive session.
I want to be noted, well, you can't vote in an executive session, so.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay, you're bringing it clearer to me.
So notification is important, but I think the approval needs to really stay at HR and the town manager's level.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm getting the public vote part of it. Anybody else have any comment? Everybody else fine with review? Okay. That's all for me.
Anything else regarding this particular issue? So just in terms of process, do you think that this will come back at the next regular meeting with?
Yeah, I think we can.
Okay.
We'll together by then.
All right, thanks.
Wait. Did anyone else have anything else?
That's what I just asked, but I don't think so.
I wasn't sure. I wanted to say one more. As far as under E, severance and settlement payments, do we want anything that says anything about all emergency personnel expenditures or all non-budgeted emergency personnel expenditures? I mean, we're limiting this to just severance and settlement payments, only because we know that's something that could come along. But what about the unintended and the unknown that we can't sit here and put in here? So in other words, a more broad category of saying all emergency personnel expenditures are non-budgeted or over a certain amount, or
I'm sorry, I'm not
Yeah.
following
Yeah,
you.
Okay, so the reason why we're putting this in is because of a specific incident. And so if there were other incidences that we could identify and put in here, we would, right? I mean, if you had other thoughts about the purchasing policy that we have found to be issue, so why can't we make this a little bit more broad? This seems a little too specific.
Does C doesn't address that, you don't think? Because that's fairly broad on emergencies, right?
I think, are you talking about payments to employees?
No,
Okay.
I'm talking about a broad category
Yeah, so I
of
see-
personnel expenditures, either
Personnel expenditures would be.
non-budgeted.
Payments to employees. That's what I'm saying.
Which would
If it's
be
personnel, it's only going to be a severance payment or a settlement payment.
Well, I mean, what if it's a car? You know?
Well, that would be part of a
That'd be-
settlement or severance agreement.
Are you talking about when someone's hired as part of a compensation?
I'm talking about the unforeseen. So I would rather see a more broad category than just settlement and severance.
I'm just trying to figure out, I'm trying to.
What, though?
I don't know what is coming down the pike,
Well,
and nor do
I'm giving you
you.
one example. For example, are you saying that you want approval of a compensation package that's offered to a new employee? Because that's
No.
different.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about something in an emergency capacity that is unbudgeted, unforeseen, not in the budget.
For personnel or for anything outside of personnel?
Involving personnel,
So C would cover that.
Yeah.
okay?
It's a purchase.
Yes, if it's a purchase.
And then,
And you're referring to purchase and expenditure, one and the same. So if it's a big pothole in the street and we got to fix that right now, that's an emergency.
Yeah.
Okay, so with C in emergencies, we're not specifying where that is occurring, correct? We're extremely broad
Any
now.
products or services. So.
Okay, yeah.
yeah, so that windstorm we had a couple years ago, I mean, the former manager took action right away and got things in place and services to get cleanup actions going, and that event was $100,000, but which triggered under C. So, I mean, that's a good example of.
What if, Deb, are you referring to if E under severance and settlement payments actually includes something other than money? It may include a car, or
Well,
it
that
may
would still
include
be
something.
covered
It
under
would still be
severance and
included under
settlement
that.
agreement,
Right.
Yep.
So in effect, C is about as broad as you're going to get. Okay.
Yes.
I'm good with that.
We're not voting on this today.
No,
Given
Yeah,
all
so
the
the-
changes that we've had to make.
Right, so the attorney's going to draft things and just come back at the next meeting.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else regarding this issue? Otherwise, it brings us to E, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with J&T Consulting, Inc. for professional services. Trustee Williams.
So I'm curious on what the cap on the spending here is, and thank you for the expenditure, or the contract that they had in previous years. This is, what, J&T Consulting. So I'm wondering if there's a cap.
we didn't include one, and we had, Martin and I had a long discussion on whether to include one or not. It's difficult. I mean, we can definitely include a cap, a not to exceed amount, if the board feels more comfortable with that. But we're thinking about the projects we have coming up over the year, and some things that may come up. I mean, J&T's been helping us with the Ridge traffic issue, and the 88's been helping us with design and construction cost estimates, and so those things come up, and we just didn't feel comfortable recommending a not to exceed amount. I mean, anything, we have projects and budget lines for the different projects and services that they would be paid out of, so it can't exceed that to begin with, but yeah, that's the reason we didn't include a not to exceed. We felt more comfortable with the Rick Davis contracting it because we have a better idea of, Rick Davis would be working mainly on the pavement and concrete program this year, so we felt comfortable with recommending a not to exceed on that one. And Martin, do you have any additional comments?
So you anticipate around or under $50,000?
Yeah, that's fair. Based on
last year?
Last year and the new hire that we have with Alex, those two components.
And is this the first year that we've used J&T Consulting?
No, we used them last year as well.
Okay, so we didn't have any expenditures there?
Yes.
Yeah, it's here.
Am I missing that?
Yes. Last year's 2011.
I mean the year before that, 2010?
Yep.
Okay, all right.
That's the year we did the request for qualifications.
Okay.
They submitted something as part of that process.
Okay. So we've used them for 1 year.
Yes.
And how do they differ from Roscoe Engineering
Well,
and what they plan to do?
Roscoe Engineering will help us primarily with development review. With anything we need assistance on with the comprehensive plan review that we have coming up, and then any applications we receive, the Remington Homes final development plan, he would provide staff review from an engineering perspective for the town on that, and any others that come forward.
The vast majority of that's all going to be paid by the developer anyway.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So then what would J&T Consulting do?
Martin, you want to come up and just give an overview of J&T's services that we use this year? I mean, Exhibit A gives you a broad overview, but Martin can give you some specifics.
Good morning, Martin Toth, staff. Thanks for the question on that. So J&T has been providing some engineering services for us over the course of the last year. So like the town manager mentioned, there's a number of projects in our CIP budget, from the improvements that are ongoing now at 88th Street for the pedestrian activated light, the McCaslin slip stability study, the merge movement between Marshall and US 36th.
The triple left.
Marshall triple left. So it could be any number of those projects that the board is interested in proceeding with. The full design and construction of any of those expenses will be included for J&T, as well as any other engineering items that come up over the course of the year. There would be some scalability to this contract amount if the board was interested in pursuing a larger or more significant project that wasn't included in the budget.
Which examples of those are the 88th Street improvements for the traffic calming and the Ridge are two that come to mind.
And can either one of these engineering firms be consolidated? Could we use only one? Do we need two? Or was there a specific reason you wanted to separate out?
Mainly for the development review aspect, I would
Okay.
rather use Roscoe Engineering for that.
Perfect, thank you for that.
You want me to? Matt, I think you just answered this, but are these expenditures within the current capital improvement program budget, or are they extra?
No, they're within.
Okay, so those limits still prevail, and these fit within? Okay. And then I noticed under each of these, they set their own rates for things like clerical services, first tier of engineer, second tier of engineer, or whatnot, I actually think it is very productive using outside expertise, if this is their field of expertise, et cetera, and you're comfortable with their services. But in the future, I'm just wondering if maybe we can't exercise a little more control over, especially if they're if we're a key contract of theirs, over that rate structure. Because I know it seems like J&T charges differently from Rick Davis from Roscoe Engineering. So I'm just putting that out there for the future.
It may limit the competitive nature of the proposals.
Yeah, I understand it's more work and all that kind of stuff too, but sometimes their rate structures were substantially different. And just was an interesting note. I don't think it should affect approval this year, though.
In general, in the town manager, except for unusual things, most of these things, if they're part of a capital construction project, this will be part of the budget that's presented for a capital. This is going to be the contractor, is going to be either the oversight contractor or the subcontractor. So in general, all of these will be identified as part of a capital construction project of any significant size.
Correct.
I did have one more question specifically about the Rick Davis contract. Go ahead, Lisa. Okay. Under the Rick Davis recommendation, you did put that cap in. I can argue merits of caps and merits of not having caps, depending on, we've got work to do. And I don't necessarily want to bound by a cap if it gets in the way of efficiency and effectiveness and all that kind of stuff. So could you explain why you put it on in the case of Rick Davis? I know it's a big expense, so I understand that part, but...
Yeah, I think we feel comfortable based on last year's pavement and concrete improvement program and the work that was provided for that and the costs that were incurred, and then any miscellaneous items that might have come up for the year that we feel, based on that knowledge, that we wouldn't exceed.
Right. And so, I'm looking at what services he provided last year, and 9/10 of that $100,000 went to a specific line item, which I don't think we're going to repeat this year, right, most of that?
We will.
Annual pavement and concrete improvements, he's going to still be the consultant on a significant...
Yeah.
Okay.
We are doing, this kind of gets off topic, but for this year's pavement and concrete, I think what Martin's bringing forward is not the same program we did last year. It's more of the traditional approach that we've done in the past. So that'll be the one subtle difference there.
Right.
We'll still need him out there.
Can you elaborate on that?
It will give, we'll send out for the bid specific streets and quantities that we expect and reconstruction of certain specific roads, rather than the guaranteed maximum price that we did last year. So, and Mark, you've been talking to these guys. Do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. Again, Martin Toth, town staff. The more traditional line item bid process that we'd seen in years past will be what staff presents to the town manager for consideration at a meeting in April. And we'll, as a part of that, we'll require some additional diligence, both on the engineering side and surveying side, and also verifying field quantities. There'll be a little bit more work on the front end for staff coordinating with consultants, have a little bit more certainty on the back end.
And that'll come before us in April?
Yes.
Great.
Actually, we're looking at March 26th.
Watch out, man, I'm here.
Trustee Skamats.
Please do it on March 26th.
That's good.
That date works great for me.
So I guess my the main concerns I have about any of these are sort of hark back to the issues we had with the engineering firm in the past. And so my understanding is each of these folks has to basically budget for each sort of element or project, and then that's reviewed by you, right?
Mhm.
And my question is just basically, how close have they been to the budgets that they've proposed in the past, and how often have they gone into contingency budgets? And have there been any breakages, failures, et cetera? Or are you satisfied with their performance?
No, we are satisfied with their performance and their budget estimates. I think for the majority of the projects, we've come under budget.
Thank you.
Okay. Additional board questions regarding E, F, and G?
Can I just make a quick comment? I just wanted to thank Martin for the extra work that he's put in to learn all this stuff and get up to speed as quickly as possible. So, good job.
Thank you.
Okay. Public comment regarding items E, F, or G? Seeing none, I'll entertain motions for those. Okay. Trustee Gregorus?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution R-9, Series 2012. A resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement between the town and J&T Consulting, Inc. for professional services.
Motion by Trustee Gregorus, second by Trustee Sorelli. Further discussion? Phyllis?
Hanson,
Yes.
Muckle,
Yes.
Pennington,
Yes.
Skumatz,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Gregoris,
Yes?
Sorelli.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to F.
I'm
I
going to do it.
want to make a motion for the Town of Superior Resolution R-10, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement between the town and Rick Davis Consulting, LLC, for professional services.
Motion by Trustee Williams is a second. Trustee Sorelli. Further discussion? Seeing none. Phyllis?
Williams,
Yes.
Skumatz,
Yes.
Pennington,
Yes.
Muckle,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Gregoris,
Yes?
Sorelli.
Yes.
Thank you. That brings us to G.
Okay.
Trustees?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution R-11, 2012, Series 2012. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement between the town and Roscoe Engineering for development review and engineering services.
Motion by Trustee Gregorus. Was there a second? Trustee Williams, discussion? Seeing none. Phyllis?
Hanson,
Yes.
right there, Muckle,
Yes.
Pennington,
Yes.
Skumatz,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Sorelli,
Yes.
Gregoris.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to what was I, preliminary reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 18 regarding building codes. Trustee Williams?
So I'm curious on some of those changes for the 2009 and 2012 code. Is any of these changes requiring businesses to retrofit? In other words, it's just new construction and new businesses that come in?
And I'll ask Ernie Kern, our chief building official, to come up and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's new construction or remodel. Is that for the energy efficiency? If they go in and do a remodel, they would...
For all those, even in the energy efficiency code, it's only on
I'm
the
sorry,
part that you remodel.
I'm sorry, name and...
Ernie Kern,
Yep.
building official.
Thank you.
The codes are always never retroactive, never have been.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah, they take place, if you remodel something, it only affects the part you remodel, and including the energy conservation code. It's only in the remodel of the area, or if you are affecting, the existing, then you need to work within the code to make it meet the code. But other than that, it does not go retroactive into any existing building.
And is that remodel significant? Is it a significant remodel, or does it trigger as to how significant the remodel is when these codes are in effect?
Well, anything that's going to require a permit,
Right.
Okay.
that's your trigger.
So, right, so any, which is any work on a construction basis. So there's no trigger, it's only in the area being affected. or the only area you're remodeling or you're adding to or anything like that. Existing buildings you're not touching. If you don't affect them, then you're not required to do anything there.
Trustee Barrington?
Ernie, just clarify for me, sprinkler systems in multifamily housing, apartments and that kind of stuff. What is our town requirement?
The code requires that all multifamily that's in the International Building Code be sprinklered. Okay. Townhouses and single-family dwellings are in the International Residential Code, and they put that in the code. We have written it to amend the code so that it is not going to be required at this time.
In townhouses?
Yeah, or single-family, right.
That's upcoming, or it's current? Is that
That's in
current
this
law?
code
That's in
that we're
our
adopting.
current town code.
Right. The code that's being adopted, we're amending
Without
the
it.
code
Yeah.
to take it out.
So that there would be no requirement in townhomes for sprinklers.
Right.
Or single-family homes.
Or single.
I understand the single-family homes. I'm not, why have we excluded townhomes?
Because they're in the International Residential Code. They're considered really basically a single-family dwelling.
So in
except
terms
for
of fire
attached.
risk, they don't have a higher fire risk, or
They do,
they
but
do?
you have construction between the buildings that...
The thick walls and all
right,
that?
Right.
Yeah.
So your wall construction. In fact, if you, they changed it. If they went to the sprinkler system in there, you're allowed to reduce that construction between the units from 2 one-hour walls to a single 2-hour wall.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with having no requirement for townhomes to have sprinklers. Seems like we're tempting the demons out there, so, yeah, I was surprised to read that. That's how I interpreted what we had been presented.
Right. But it allows, the way it has it, you have to do the same as if they're 2 separate buildings with a 0 lot line. Okay, so you have certain construction required on that, building. And it's on each building, so each side of the wall. If you adopt or within the code, if you choose to sprinkler, if a developer chooses to sprinkler the buildings, they can reduce that
Right.
separation between the 2 buildings.
Yeah, I understand. I'll just note it for the future.
And we're going to meet with, I got a call from Chief Tombolato, and because we were talking about this, we're going to meet with them just to discuss before the final reading and get their input as well, so.
Trustee Williams?
So would that include the Summit townhomes then? Are they
Yes,
will be excluded from needing sprinkler systems?
correct.
Okay.
Have a
Trustee
question,
Cirilli?
not for the building official, but for the town manager. Did the planning commission make a recommendation on these codes?
It didn't, I don't think it's gone to the planning commission yet. It has not gone to the planning commission. I don't believe. I don't, that, we typically never, since I can remember, I don't think we've ever taken it to the planning commission for their input.
But we did take the green building codes to the planning commission.
It's, right, we did. Because that affects,
We took that there because they were looking at how it might affect their planning commission reviews and stuff with property of new developments and stuff that came in. Green would have certain requirements, so maybe an orientation of a building or something might be affect what they were looking at in the planning stages, and that's why we took the green building code there.
Ernie, I hate to be dense on this, but currently in the town code, as effective right now, townhomes do or do not have to have sprinklers.
They do not.
Right, okay. And this is consistent with that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Along Trustee Cirilli's lines, I mean, I guess there's no particular downside. I mean, it seems like these are pretty small changes right now, but if the board felt that it was important to have to go to the planning commissions, there's nothing on her. There's no building that's happening right now, so if that's...
I would like to have them have a chance, personally.
Yeah.
Same here. I would agree.
Okay.
You can work that in.
We can still have the preliminary reading, but, and
Yeah.
then they can give us a report, so. Okay, public comment regarding this issue? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the preliminary reading.
Okay. So, do we want to do a preliminary reading, or do we want to just skip that and send it straight to
I do
Planning
that,
Commission
my
first?
recommendation that we do the preliminary reading, it'll go to the planning commission, they'll give us a report for the final reading.
Does everyone agree?
Anybody want to? Anybody want to read a motion? Anybody want to approve a preliminary reading?
Go ahead.
Trustee Skumatz.
I'd like to move, oops, I did have the wrong page after all. Sorry, if someone else gets it faster.
Sure. I'd like to move to approve a preliminary reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 18 of the Superior Municipal Code regarding updated building codes.
Motion by Trustee Williams, second by Trustee Sorelli. Discussion. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. That brings.
I'm actually against that preliminary reading, so I'll
Okay,
do
so in
that.
favor is Hanson, Sorelli, Skumatz, Muckle, Williams, Gregoris. Opposed is Pennington.
So it's not-
Did you say it was opposed?
No, Pennington. Yeah, just one.
This isn't the one we need to read? I thought we needed to read this one.
I think that we're covered here. Okay?
So this goes next to the Planning Commission.
Yes.
Yes, and then it's coming back to us.
Perfect.
Okay. That brings us to item number 8, discussion and consideration of the purchase of landscape boulders and park furniture for Kuffner Field at Town 9 Park. Mr. Magley?
Thank you, Mayor. This item was asked by the board to be presented tonight for your consideration. ProStack, we've had some issues with the use of this field because it's an unprogrammed field, so we get a lot of drop-in groups and had some confrontations with those groups and trying to limit to a 2-hour playtime, and it hasn't worked through just communications and trying to reinforce. And I think the goal was to use this park as a neighborhood park and not a regional park. So ProStack thought that if one solution might be to divide the field going north to south, and Martin, and along with ProStack, has come up with this solution. Martin, why don't you go cover what you got there?
May I say something before Martin says anything? This is a no-brainer, so just keep it short. Go ahead, I'm just,
I'd have
take
made,
your time
I'd have
and,
made consent agenda.
Thank you. Good evening, Martin Toth, Town staff. As Mr. Magley described, members of ProStack as well as staff have heard from several citizens and have witnessed the growing use of Kuffner Field over the last couple of years. If you haven't had a chance to go by there on the weekend, it can get very popular. There's been a wide range of organized sports groups of all ages that have come to use this place for organized practice and as well as spending an extended amount of time over weekends. Now, if you think back to when the facility was first developed, it was approved as an unprogrammed space for drop-in and neighborhood use. It isn't programmed, it's not scheduled. So local residents and youth sports, especially the teams under 10, if you think of the BC4 soccer teams and the YMCA soccer teams, a lot of those folks have been the predominant users there over the years. And they're smaller groups, smaller children. They can often have 3 or 4 groups on the field simultaneously. But over the last year or two, the word has gotten out, apparently, and some of the other groups have heard about this high-quality field that you don't have to pay a fee for and don't have to call us in order to schedule, in order to use. And there's been some older groups and some ultimate Frisbee teams, some club teams from CU and some other organizations around the area that have come to get to the field early, and they'll stay all day and they'll use it for extended periods of time and not allow other groups or local neighborhood folks to use the field. Or even a portion of it for their own practice. They'll take up literally the entire field. So as a method of encouraging neighborhood residents and some of the younger kids groups to use the field for drop-in use, ProStack and staff are recommending that several boulders pieces of park furniture, picnic benches, or picnic tables and benches be installed.
Yeah, why don't you just point out, I mean, for the public,
Sure.
what you got there?
So the point is to introduce some physical pieces, some physical elements to the center of the field to effectively divide the field in half, rather than one large field that's nearly 400 feet long. Make two smaller fields that are about 100 feet by almost by 200 feet by almost 100 feet. So a 200 by 85-foot field. Two smaller fields for smaller kids to use more often and can play more and have expanded drop-in use. So the line of boulders would be a mix of boulders and some park furniture down the center, and then also some on either side to frame the field a little bit, give it more of a shape, and make it a little bit easier to see and use for some of the smaller kids groups.
With the total budget of about $5,000.
Not all.
See.
I'm surprised it's not that.
Martin and his staff were able to secure a good rate from a vendor for the boulders, so.
Yeah, that was a good deal a few
That's a
weeks
great
ago.
price.
Might not be
Kinda
there
got away
now,
with it, yeah.
but for around $5,000, or no more than $5,000, which you should be able to find a good amount of some boulders, probably in 3 to 4 foot, or maybe some smaller range of sizes, probably averaging around 3 feet in that pinkish colored rose stone, and then mix it in with some of the park furniture that the town manager referred to, and have it look within scale and have it fit with the overall use of the park, and then hopefully give folks a place to sit and enjoy a soccer game or soccer practice.
In the middle of the field, what are those two dark spots there?
Those are the benches, picnic
Okay.
tables and benches. This is a real high tech.
So if we can ask questions, and I recognize many people have looked over this, but I have a real penchant for wanting to maintain flexibility. And so for me, I'd much rather have just multiple weighted picnic tables or chained to concrete or, something like that. Not where we have, obstructions in the field itself so people could trip. But if we ever needed to open it up to a full-size field for a special event for a town or something, I would hate to have those boulders there where you have no flexibility. So I'd be much more in favor of multiple picnic tables weighted in place or chained in place, and not boulders, which are immovable. So.
Well, actually, and that was, we had that discussion specifically, and we, I think Martin feels that him and his staff could move those boulders to open up the field for an event, or if it turns out that we want to open it up, we can use those boulders elsewhere. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So just to introduce some element of flexibility, the town board has heard as part of the budget process, the Town 9 Park Enhancement Project will happen over the course of this year. So having some flexibility with the materials that are installed now helps. So these are boulders that can be moved with the equipment that the town has now, between the backhoe that we have and then a skid steer that will be purchased and arrive in the next couple of months. And then the park furniture itself will need to be staked down pretty intensely. There are some folks who take it as a challenge to try and move stuff that's in our parks. So yeah, there will be an element of flexibility. This isn't a one and done. It wouldn't easily be moved, but it is moved.
So,
Thank you.
just a quick question for me, and then Trustee Williams. So, I'm going to assume, though, that this is not the final design of the park, because if this is what we discussed, trying to do particular programs and doing, this is not going to be one element of the final design, correct? This is just a temporary solution to a temporary problem. And this does not mean that this is the final design, because I'd be completely opposed to doing this if this was anticipated to be the final design, because I haven't seen it yet. Is that a fair assessment?
That's exactly correct.
Okay. Trustee Williams.
And how large are the boulders?
Usually about 3 feet. 3 feet diameter. If you think about the boulders that are at the Three Parks facility around some of the elements of the mountain bike skills course, it's probably a good point of reference. Oh yeah, and also the boulders that line
Say that again?
the boulders that line Honey Creek
Oh,
the way
okay.
to the parking lot at the Three Parks facility would be a good analog.
Trustee Pennington.
Quality of the picnic tables and benches, are we taking them from inventory as a temporary sort of thing, or are we purchasing new?
These would be new elements that are consistent with the town spec that's been established over the last couple of years. If you've seen any of the benches or picnic tables that have been purchased in the last couple of years, it'll look just like those.
So are they, for example, are the picnic tables wood, are they concrete, or what do they look like?
They're a composite material, I believe.
Okay.
Those have been the heavier duty ones, like if you saw the one at the dog park.
Sorry, yeah, just make sure that I don't want to have back and forth, so can you describe what they are?
My concern over there is that's totally in the sun. Are they, will they get hot for the kids to use? I mean, will they be totally unable to be sat upon in, a 90-degree, mile-high day? Or will they be, that's what I'm worried about with the picnic tables and benches. Will they be usable in the heat of the day, or will they get hot?
Cause third-degree burns, or?
Right.
Probably similar to like you've experienced in some of the other town facilities. They'll get warm. These are the heavy-duty, heavy-gauge steel with the wrapped rubber around them, and they will get warm. You'd have to cover it if it was a particular hot part of the day, but no different than any place else that we have in town.
So is $5,000 the total budget, including picnic tables and benches, or just the boulders?
Altogether.
Okay.
That's really a good price.
Yeah, I think the price is good. I'm just concerned, because that's that's wide open there to the element, to the heat. And you've got the kids in the playground over here, et cetera. I just want to make sure we're not, if I have to spend a little bit more to get a product that, like a synthetic material that doesn't absorb the heat, et cetera, and I'm just putting it out there.
Is there a product out there that's not going to get hot?
Trex, light colored.
It won't get.
It doesn't absorb heat. Yeah, that's where I'm going with this. Lisa. Even concrete doesn't. But
Alan,
Sorry, yeah.
The light colored ones reflect it.
Trustee Hanson, well, he's coming forward.
Okay, I just wanted to go back to the mayor's question, Martin, or Matt. This, when the new design is done, that's actually going to be moved? Those boulders will be moved?
Well, that's to be determined. The company we hire will do the final design and construction documents with input from ProStack and the board and Planning Commission, and so, it could include elements of that or look totally different.
So the anticipation, though, is that field will still be divided one way or the other, so it won't be usable by the big groups like that. So they may be a swirly pattern, they might stay as they are just as long as it goes well with the new design.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that this is temporary, because I'm going to be a big fan of Mr. Kuffner's senior's ballpark here, and this obviously has just eliminated that. So it would have to be redesigned in this configuration. I know of no ball field that looks like that.
Well, and Martin mentioned to me today that actually the distance from the northwest corner to the boulders, you could actually still have a Little League practice on that portion of the field, right?
Sure. So, again, Martin told town staff, so it's 110 feet for an official T-ball game, 125 for a Pinto League game. So this is about 180 feet from the home plate to down the left field foul line.
Yeah, so once again, if I'm just going to weigh my opinion here. If this is a temporary thing that we need to do to solve this temporary problem and is probably going to be redesigned, fantastic. If this is what we think is the next design, I'm going to be fundamentally opposed to it. So,
yeah, I think it needs to be cleared right now, so I agree.
Chris, what did you say?
I just wanted to make sure that was clear, because I didn't understand it that way. I thought that this possibly could be, for this part of the park, that was kind of going to be it.
So how do you understand it now? With that same understanding?
Based on what just happened here, that is just going to be in place until summertime when the park is finished up, and that could change. That design could change, or the change will be implemented in the new design.
Correct.
So the design comes first, takes precedence overall. So when the board sees an agreement to do construction, hopefully in the summer, whatever's in that design will be what happens there. It could include this, it might not.
So when do you expect that to be implemented? In the spring? Now?
Do you have time?
As soon as possible. So there would be some ordering we would need to do the materials, and then it would be dependent on weather, and then making sure that we had staff time to go down and actually do the installation. So ideally, within a month, maybe a little more.
Okay.
Trustee Williams, Trustee Pennington?
So the $5,000 of materials will be reused and replaced in or repositioned elsewhere. It'll be utilized, in other words,
Yeah, there'll be no throwaway.
Right. No throw.
on Town 9.
Potentially, but if the design, whatever the final design is, we may have to use them elsewhere in the community, parts of them, right?
Yeah, any of the materials, again, going back to the flexibility of this design, if it's boulders and furniture, it's something that can be moved elsewhere and incorporated into another facility.
So I'm back to my hot picnic tables. I'm with the mayor on this, I want to make sure the final specs are all very tolerant of younger kids, because we're talking T-ball, we're talking younger youth sports, we're talking playground right now to the other side of this. So I just want to make sure that we're making a good decision, even temporarily, because we have to buy them anyway, depending on the price of the other ones. Maybe we buy something that's more sun tolerant. So I see Jim chomping at the bit there, too. Anybody can weigh in on that picnic table issue as far as I'm concerned.
I'll ask
Alan?
Nick, the superintendent of parks and open space, to talk about the materials that we use for the benches around town and some of the rationale.
I'm Alan, the parks superintendent. Of course, the best heat resistant is wood, but it's the least durable. The vinyl coated tables we use now throughout town, and that's what these are. They're perforated, they have big holes, and they hold up well. So if we use them here, we can move them to another site.
Do we have those out at 3 parks right now? In the bright, open sunlight, getting all the sun, and what's your how are they? How do they perform in terms of heat?
We haven't heard of anybody
Getting burned?
Burnt with them.
Okay.
Were you like a helicopter mom when you were young? No.
I'm a helicopter trustee.
Trustee Williams?
So the same benches that are in the dog park
Yes.
will be the same benches here?
Yes.
Okay, well, I can attest to sitting on them during the extreme heat with my dog, and...
Did you get burned?
No, I didn't get burned.
And they weren't under the.
No. In fact, I remember sitting on it thinking, wow, it'd really be nice if there was some covering here.
Personal testimonial carries a lot of sway with me, so if you
It was warm.
We need to standardize.
The seat was warm,
I agree. Standardization, too.
Thanks.
but I could sit on it.
Okay.
Sit on it.
Additional board questions regarding this, otherwise some public comment regarding it?
Just
Trustee Hanson,
again,
yes.
we're expecting, and this is kind of a change topic, we're expecting to see, the RFPs are going out in March for the design for this thing, is that what I remember? And then when is the design supposed to be, when are we supposed to see the first draft of the design?
Well, if we're going to send the RFP out in March, we wouldn't have board approval probably of the company that's going to do that design work until the second meeting in April, probably. So then they have to do their work. So you're looking at May.
Okay, all right.
We're trying to get her in as quick as possible because we want to hit the construction season, so
Right.
get the park done before weather starts to hit again in the fall. So
Okay, public comment regarding this particular issue?
George Kuffner of 7520 West Cochrane. I think this is something that we really need, and we needed it yesterday.
I know.
Versus waiting, because this time of the year when the grass is dry and guys get on it with their cleats, they're tearing it to the dirt. And I go by there several times during the weekend, and they don't care. I mean, they don't even care enough to move over just a little bit so that they don't have the same nasty hole they're playing in. You know, they're not happy until they got it smooth like this tabletop. So the sooner we can put that in, the better. And then with my dad, yeah, you may have a little bit of a deal there if it's not. I think it's 220 feet to be exact for Little League. But I agree with you that about the ball field, because otherwise we'll hear about it for a long time.
Thank you, George.
Additional public comment regarding this?
So, let's see, we move forward.
Yep, so they'll entertain a motion then.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of landscape boulders and park furniture for Kuffner Field at Town 9 Park.
Motion by trustee Williams, second by trustee Gregoris. Discussion. My only discussion is that I generally really don't like doing things piecemeal. I think we've had a lot of discussion about that in the past. I think that we're solving a semi-emergency issue regarding the field. I'm happy to put this in there right now, but with the understanding that this may stay here, but is not set in stone.
Set in Boulder.
Set in Boulder, exactly. So, trustee Skumatz?
And I'm very in favor of the division of the thing, but I'm not in favor of the boulders, so I'm going to vote for, I would rather have it be all very usable benches.
Okay. Fair enough. So all
Anchored in.
All in favor. Let's see, Phyllis, I guess we're spending money, sorry.
Yeah.
Williams?
Yes.
Skumatz?
No.
Pennington?
Yes.
Muckle?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Gregoris?
Yes.
Srelly?
Yes.
Very good. That carries. Thank you so much. And that brings us to item number 9, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Cocal Landscape for flower bed installation. Mr. Magley?
Thank you, Mayor. Spring is around the corner, so we...
It doesn't feel that way.
It doesn't feel that way, does it?
No.
Martin and his staff has been working with Cocal Landscape, our main consultant for landscape services, on our annual flower bed plantings, and he has a presentation, and have representatives from Cocal here as well. So, Martin?
What do you intend to do about rabbits this year?
Bring in a lot of coyotes. Again, Martin Taylor, town staff. As the manager described, we're ready to think about the spring plantings for the annual color and perennial conversion program. The town until last year had planted annual flowers in about 80 flower beds across the town, about 20,000 square feet total around the community as part of our ongoing landscape maintenance plan. Last year, as part of this contract that the board heard at this time, the board approved a proposal to complete the first year of a 5-year schedule to replace approximately 80% of the flower beds from annuals to perennials. And the perennial flowers we talked about last year have a lot of the benefits that you don't have with annual flowers. They're a little bit more xeric in nature, less maintenance, and less water consumptive over time. The 80% that would be converted to perennials is comprised of locations that are generally interior planter beds, areas that are not prominent. They're not entry areas for the town. They're locations like trail entrances and interior park areas, some of the smaller interior pocket park areas. The 20% of flower beds that will continue to be planted with annual species include the areas around monument signs, the areas along Caslin and Colton, and in the marketplace, if you've seen the bright splashes of color there. And then some portions of the primary medians that you see through town on Colton and McCaslin and Rock Creek Parkway. Since the annuals provide that visual impact, that splash of vibrant color, they generally fit best in areas with more vehicular traffic, broader color at a higher speed. So perennials are generally better suited to pedestrian scale areas or neighborhood scale parks. So although there were some challenges last year, including rabbits and some other challenges with some different weather, the flower program on the whole we felt worked out real well. It was really successful town-wide. So for the second of the 5-year program, the agreement calls for converting 5 more beds around town. So we're proposing to work from a similar schedule this year that calls for this incremental conversion of the beds, staying roughly within the budget that the board has approved in years past for annual color. And this year's maintenance budget actually includes some savings for maintenance that wasn't there in years past of about $8,000. So Parks and Open Space Superintendent Alan McBath worked closely with staff from COCAL, and here tonight is landscape architect Stacy Purcell, who will go over a few of the details of each of the proposed beds that would be scheduled for conversion this year. So if I'd like to introduce Stacy Purcell.
Hi, Stacy Parcell, COCAL Landscape. One of the things that we really started last year was kind of coming up with themes that gave, sorry, I am vertically challenged.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
One of the things that we really started last year to come up with was to really come up with themes that gave people a reason to actually visit the beds and stop by and actually look at them. Last year we came up with the sensory gardens, the state flower bed, some more of our xeric butterflies, and so we continued on with that theme again this year, keeping in mind that we wanted to be very sustainable and use a sustainable plant palette that will use less water, bloom a little bit more frequently, and those kinds of things. And as we go on through the seasons, you will see different pops of color come up and down. Sure. And one of the things that we really wanted to do was use the color in a way that would bloom at different times of the year. So every time that you would, as you were walking by these beds and you would see them, if it was in May, it would look one way, and if it was in September, it would look a different way. So this is actually a xeric butterfly bed that we wanted to do at 3267 West Yarrow Circle, and that's actually a thoroughway that goes into one of the concrete walking paths within the town. And then the next one is, this is at Indiana and North Torrey's Peak. Last year we did the west side, and this year we will be doing the east side. This is the 4-way intersection. We did have some challenges there last year with keeping the beds planted, so we wanted to go through and convert the rest of them to perennials. This is actually, we wanted to kind of come up with a theme for the community centers, both North Pool and South Pool. We did have a lot of challenges there over the years with keeping those beds planted, and that comes with the foot traffic. And since these are, especially North Pool, these are used as for swimming events and stuff like that, we wanted to kind of come up with a victory theme for these so that, kind of went along with the heat ribbon colors that you would win for your swimming events. So both the North Pool and the South Pool will have a red, white, and blue color theme to go in there. And then at Riverbend and Pitkin, this is kind of like an out-of-the-way bed. And last year, we came up with, actually last fall, Alan and I came up with a standard xeric palette, which we could kind of create a common thread throughout the whole town so that it's not just one bed looks this way and one bed looks the other way. We wanted to create continuity, the same way that we would with the annual color, so that it kind of makes sense where you're all at. And so this is kind of like a continuation of the standard xeric color palette that we've kind of come up with for our perennials. I think that's all of them. Is that all of them? That's all of the beds that we were going to do this year. This year we are converting about 4,000 square feet. That's the number we came up with. So we are reducing it year by year.
Great, thanks. Questions from the board? Trustee Pennington?
One, I want to thank staff for bringing this forth early. It feels like we're getting this a little earlier. And at the risk of sounding negative, I actually am on this last year. yes, the rabbits destroyed it, but I'm seeing, in terms of the annuals, I'm seeing the exact same flower selection this year that the rabbits loved last year, particularly the zinnias, which I think failed on a couple of, I will caveat this by saying I'm a huge perennial flower landscaping person, and right, and the rabbits or some animals seem to have chopped them off at their roots last year, at their stems. And then when they replanted, they didn't take well to replanting because you had the tall zinnias next to the newly replanted babies. The beds looked very ragged. And so I was disappointed when I actually saw zinnias being a flower of choice this year. How do you feel about that?
Part of the reasons why we did go with the zinnia again this year is the town's policy to be very sustainable. The zinnias use the least amount of water for annuals. So that was one of the reasons why we did it too. And the other reasons why you don't always see the bunny rabbits eating the perennials is that they have kind of like, the leaves are a little bit hairier on them. If you actually go up and touch them, you'll get a slight prickle to them. And we actually did kind of try to combat that this year with going to a verbenia, which is a vegetative plant that does have kind of a hairier leaf. So the thought process behind that is to stop them from going into the bed, and that will use less water.
But right now I'm talking about the annuals.
I know that, but the verbena, which is also in the color program, which is the border plant, that has the hairy leaf on it.
Well, I think the zinnias fail on a couple of levels, and I know this is detail, but I think it actually caused the failure of the annual beds last year. Is one, the rabbits ate them, and two, the color fades in the summer with the intense heat. They actually were most lovely in the fall as the heat subsided. And so I'm usually very complimentary of the beds, and I have to say I would like to see some alternatives to zinnias, the plant of choice there. How do you feel the perennial beds fared last year? We did ask you to put together a perennial program, but I want to know, is that a good idea in your opinion?
I do think it's a good idea in my opinion, but as moving forward, it's not going to delineate or lessen the amount of potential maintenance that you will have, because with the annuals, it's weekly deadheading and those kinds of things. But perennials do, in and of itself, create that maintenance issue that I think a lot of you have had that discussion with. You have to cut it down in the fall, you have to deadhead it to keep it blooming, and those kinds of things. We have tried to come up with a scheme that will reduce as much maintenance as possible, but in order for you guys to get that really nice, big, lush look that you want, there is going to be maintenance involved in it.
I actually would like to recommend in the perennial program that we actually consider ground cover within the perennial program. Have you considered that?
We actually have considered that with some of the plant material that we have used in here. We have some sun drops that we're using. We're using some blanket flowers. We're using some of those kinds of things that will actually kind of spread. The one thing that we want to be very careful of is that we don't pick plant types that self-seed that easily and become another maintenance issue with how windy it is here. So, there's a lot of things that we really do need to consider. We're fixing one problem, but we might be posing another problem by choosing a certain kind of plant material.
Right. And just one, I'll then turn it over to Elias chomping here. Shrubs and bushes. I was a little surprised, and I'll throw this out to staff. When we did the budgets, if my recollection's right, shrubs and bushes fall under a different budget item than annuals, right? Yet in an attractive bed, you've got the tiers. You've got shrubs and bushes in the background, and then taller perennials, taller flowers next, et cetera, et cetera. And in a bunch of our beds, it seems to me we're lacking those sturdy things that stay there year after year, and those are shrubs and bushes. And we're trying to make up all that ground with annuals and perennials. I'd like your opinion on that.
Actually, I kind of disagree slightly with that. What we're doing is we're actually retrofitting these perennials into actually existing shrub beds, so that structure is already there. There have been some instances where we have had to take out a lot, and one of the things that we are removing is the junipers within the town, and the junipers is what is creating the habitat that the bunnies are actually living in. So one of the things is trying to get rid of that we have been working on. When we are doing that, we are adding shrubs back into it. So we're doing it on case-by-case instance. So this go-around is mostly perennials, but things that we had did, especially last fall, were both shrubs and perennials. So we're looking at it on case instance.
Other comments?
I actually, if
Go ahead.
nobody else, I'm
You're on a roll.
I think this is such a defining part of Rock Creek, and such a wonderful part of going into our original town, and it defines us. So, and it's a lot of money. It's close to $1 million. So, I do take it seriously.
No, it's not $1 million.
How much is it?
Is it $1 million?
Close to 100,000.
Oh, 100,000, I mean, sorry. Yeah.
The prettiest community.
It's late, sorry.
That woke me up.
Good. I actually like diversity in the annual beds. I actually thought everything was too similar last year. So for whatever it's worth, I actually like a couple of things in the annual beds and have a little diversity, and that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to say it. I really like the concept of these perennial beds each having a different theme, and I'm throwing out there to the general board and to Martin and Matt as well. I think the theme of these is largely unknown to the person who's stopping to look at the bed, and I'd sort of suggest a little signage in each bed that this is the Colorado State bed, so that the public knows they're looking at a bed that has the columbine or whatnot in it, and that it says xeric butterfly bed, so that the public knows when they're walking with their kids, et cetera, and they can stop, and it can be a learning experience that these are butterfly attracting plants. Just an idea.
That's a great idea.
Great.
That's all for me.
That's easy to do.
Trustee Williams?
My one concern, this is obviously something I had been asking for many years here on the board, to use perennials instead of annuals. The color is important, yes, but also how, I'm not a gardener, okay, how bushy the plants appear instead of being sparse and seeing the ground. Are they more robust, and is it going to take 10 years to get there?
Typically, no. They're planted a little bit on the heavier side currently, and usually the way we have developed this in our prototypes last year is that in 3 to 4 years we should start to see them really fill in and have that really lush look that I think that you're envisioning in your head. It's just, they just have to grow. It's just like your child. It's just like your children.
I get that. I totally am on board with that. But I was just, I just wanted to make sure that the end result was, a lush bed.
Yes, and kind of if you walk down to Asti Park, which was planted, did we do that 4 years ago? That was planted 4 years ago. I think last year finally that started to do what it was in.
Where was that?
Just right down the road at Asti
Oh,
Park.
okay. Yes, right.
So those are actually really starting to fill in, and those were the first test xeric beds that we planted within the town.
Additional board comment? Public?
Yes.
Trustee Cirilli?
While you're going after habitats, don't forget the voles.
They live in the junipers too.
So what would our option be? How do you feel, I know this is nitpicky to some, but how do you feel about the zinnia issue? And is there an alternative?
Actually, we tried marigolds, which many people think that is the cure-all for the bunny problem, and that was actually worse than the zinnias were.
They eat marigolds out here.
They eat marigolds out here. They eat really anything, and so we're hoping, and we did plant less if we actually look at the quantities this year compared to last year. There's less quantity of zinnias within the beds. So that if they do attack it, it won't be as prevalent as it was last year in certain cases.
Are you actually out here? Are you part of the crew that comes out and looks it over during the season?
Yep,
Right.
I am actually out here when all of this gets installed. I'm out here on a weekly basis in the summer.
The loss of color of those annual beds during the heat of the summer, how would you address that?
I actually didn't think that happened last year, to be honest with you. You will see them, and I think the loss of color, what you're looking for is that we didn't probably deadhead it a little bit quick enough. So it was actually a spent flower that you were seeing that was the loss of color, as opposed to the actual flower losing the color throughout the summer. So we can try to pick that up a little bit more and be sure that we're clipping those heads off a little bit quicker. And this year the zinnias are actually white, so if we see that bleach out, it will probably not be anything.
They're white?
Yeah, it's a white zinnia this year that we're going. It's an Ivory Magellan, which is white with kind of like a creamy yellow center in it, as opposed to the pink and orange that we did last year.
So they're colorless.
White is a common color, is where your eye is supposed to rest, so it's actually a key ingredient in all perennial and annual recipes. It makes the other colors a lot more vibrant.
Additional public comment? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Trustee Skumatz?
I'd like to move Town of Superior Resolution Number R-13-ish?
I think it's 13, yes.
Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement between the town and CoCal Landscape Services for flower bed installation. 13?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Motion by Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Pennington. Thank you very much. And with the caveat that Trustee Pennington will be able to participate with CoCal sometime and look around at the guards. And
We're spending money, right, so we have to go
Yes,
down
we
the
are.
pike? Okay.
Phyllis?
Buckle,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Gregores.
Yes, but I'd like to have little tiny no trespassing signs with little bunnies on them, so. That's right.
Sorelli,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Skumatz,
Yes, a nice presentation.
Pennington.
I'm not confident I'm going to have to vote no.
Okay. That motion carries. Thank you very much. Anything else to come before the board this night? Seeing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you.